Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound Radio Show, your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. I'm Robert Winfrey. I'm your host for this. I go back and forth about telling you guys when we're recording. I mean, I mentioned we always record Sunday evenings, unless we have a week off for one reason or another. Today is Sunday, the 23rd of December, and
Still 2018.
Still 2018. You know, this was going to be a short show. You know, it was just going to be a preview of 232. We were just going to go over the fights. Only a couple of them, really, because there's a lot of dross on that card. So we're going to talk about those. We were going to talk about some of the fights that got made because the UFC announced, some fights for upcoming events. They finally got a main event for their first ESPN card. It's lackluster, but they've got it. So we had all that stuff.
Well, it's okay.
Okay, let me put it like this. It's lackluster when you consider that they're burning a champion versus champion fight to kill a division on ESPN+. I mean,
well,
again,
that's not ESPN. That's ESPN+.
I know, that's what I said. And
it would be underwhelming if they put an interim title fight up for this one, which they still could.
That is entirely possible. I don't think it's likely, but crazier things. Anyway, so we were all set for that.
This is a sport that's made up of unlikely things happening.
Yeah,
that are unlikely.
I'm currently operating under the opinion that MMA is satire-proof. Not comedy-proof. There's too much inherent comedy in the sport for it to be comedy-proof. But if you were to get a screenwriter or a novelist and say, okay, we're going to satirize MMA, I don't think you can do it. I genuinely don't think you can satirize this. But anyway, the point of all that being...
Start satirizing itself, I guess.
Yeah, like, it's a self-parody. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? If your job is to, I mean, one of my brothers is watching Spinal Tap for the first time, which is great, a great movie.
Yeah.
But I just thought to myself, you know, you couldn't do anything like that in MMA because all the stupid stuff that you make fun of actually happens in the real world. About an hour before we started recording, news broke, UFC 232, this coming Saturday, still on, is changing venues. They are moving from Las Vegas. They were the T-Mobile Center. I'm going off the top of my head.
The T-Mobile
so I apologize
Center.
if that's wrong.
T-Mobile Arena.
Arena, thank you.
In Nevada.
I get center arenas and whatnot confused. The T-Mobile Arena.
This literally happened just like hours ago. Today's
an hour
Sunday.
Ago at most.
Tomorrow is Christmas Eve. Today is the Sunday before Christmas Eve. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve. This just happened today. Yeah. Now, it could have been developing the last couple days, but we are only just hearing about it now as we're recording this.
And apparently at least two of the fighters on this card only found out about it over the internet. Anyway, they're moving it from, again, the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas to the
Forum.
The Forum in Inglewood, California. I forgot the specific venue. I knew it was LA, so they'll be in Inglewood specifically, in Los Angeles.
I think this is the UFC's first time at the Forum.
They've been here before. I could swear they've been there before.
I know Bellator has been here before at the Forum.
I'll have to double check that, but
this is crazy.
Yeah,
I don't know what's
hang on. So everyone understands the impetus for this move. This was not actually just the UFC deciding to raise a giant middle finger to everyone who bought tickets or made plans. I wouldn't put it past them, mind you, but this wasn't that. There was and let me be clear on the language here. There was not a failed drug test from John Jones. There were some, how did they define it? Atypical findings?
Atypical finding.
Right. They found a few...
Not a space typical, the word atypical. One word.
Yeah, that is correct. So just something a little bit out of the ordinary. Now, USADA apparently this is one of their tests. They looked over all the data, and aren't taking any action against John. The Nevada State Athletic Commission just decided that based on how close this comes to the event, they weren't comfortable with their ability to investigate and then and license him for this upcoming fight.
Honestly, that's fair. I think that's fair.
It's not the most unreasonable response. That's very true. I mean, never mind that they, will take 8 months to sort out video footage and try to do anything about Conor and Khabib, but I mean, never mind. I'll get to the Nevada State Athletic Commission in a minute. So, apparently California, when they heard that the UFC wanted to move this event to the Forum, immediately gave John a drug test, which he passed, according to them.
When you say immediately, when do you think the drug test happened?
They expedited the entire testing procedure for this one because of the circumstances.
Is that even possible?
Yeah.
Considering, sometimes we don't hear about drug testing result, or in the past, we wouldn't hear about results for weeks or even months.
Well, that's just procedure. Normally the way this works is you collect samples, you then send them to a lab that will run them through the gamut of tests and give you the results.
Can a lab really analyze those type of results within minutes or hours?
Yes.
Is that scientifically possible?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The reason it takes so long is because the labs that they send these things to, there's not one for the UFC. There's a lab that USADA will say contract their testing to, because USADA that USADA has. That lab will handle all the testing that USADA does across all the sports that they oversee. And these things get backed up. These things take time. There are hours limitations. There are manpower limitations. And, I mean, because, again, USADA does all the Olympic-level drug testing for the United States, basically. So every sample that they collect from amateur wrestling, from gymnastics, from sprinting, from et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, goes through the same set of labs. So there's just a lot of material that has to be processed. I have no problem and more importantly, this wasn't, I believe in this instance, this wasn't a USADA test that California ordered, it was just one of theirs, so they could test it, they could have John pee into the cup, take it to the lab, then, pay whatever extra fee might be associated with getting it done immediately, and it can be done as soon as is, scientifically viable, and I apologize, I don't know the exact timetable on this. But this is not a days-long process to test a single sample.
Okay.
So the point being, I have no problem believing that they, if we're going to do this, John must pass a drug test right the hell now. John was already in California, or they flew him in and he peed in a cup and passed the test. So, and California will sanction the fight. We'll license him to fight. There will be a hearing for John in Nevada in January is when it's tentatively scheduled for. I say tentatively because the Nevada State Athletic Commission is a bureaucratic mess. Not every athletic commission is, most are, but Nevada is also exceptionally bureaucratic. So I don't think we've actually had confirmation from Alexander Gustafsson that he's agreeing to this yet. Apparently, Gus, when this news started breaking, Gustafsson was taking a helicopter tour of the Grand Canyon. Which is a really cool thing to do, by the way. I've never done it, but if you have the time and the ability to do so, and he's just in Nevada for, fight week or whatnot, and just wanted to take some time out of his day to do that, fine. But apparently there was again, we just haven't heard from him. So
I'm sure his manager or his management in the UFC are working out the details.
I assume so. Again, that seems a valid assumption. I'm just saying we don't have actual confirmation.
Honestly, I'm not really, as amusing as all this is, I'm not really upset about this news. It is amusing, though.
Yeah, this is just... Again, I'm not up in arms over it. I'm really not, but...
at risk of getting called a shell,
So
I can't really fault the UFC for their actions here because they're trying. Maybe it's foolish, but they're trying to keep the event alive, right?
Well,
the
event would go forward anyway. Like if, and
well,
I think
they're trying to keep this fight intact, and I can't
Yeah.
really look. The UFC is a fight promotion; they're fight promoters. I can't really fault them for trying to keep the matchup intact.
no, I can't either. And
here's the other thing: the whole drug testing thing. I think I said in the past that UFC had no obligation to clean up the sport or make sure the sport is clean. And if they really wanted to do that, what they would need is some sort of governing body that they would have to submit to allow to regulate them and handle all the drug testing, which is sort of what happened with USADA, who the UFC were practically demanded and harangued into making a deal with. But this is all very chaotic and crazy nonetheless. And it is amusing to some degree.
Yeah, I'm waiting for something crazy to happen while they're all trying to get to the venue. I'm waiting for the plane to have faulty landing gear and they have to be diverted.
All right. Well, look, I'm just going to say this. Fans and media, this is your fault. This is your fault because you wanted a clean sport. You wanted the sport to get cleaned up. And this is the result. So,
and I'd actually argue it's not even that effective at cleaning it up.
Well, look. Like a friend on my Facebook said USADA has to go. And I'm like, why do they have to go? They're doing their jobs. They're doing what you wanted to happen. You guys, you wanted random testing, year-round testing. This is what was practically demanded of the UFC after the whole Anderson Silva dust-up. Or is everyone forgot? Everyone's forgetting that. People were up in arms. This was like, there was hysteria. There was derangement over the drug testing, and people were angry. People wanted blood, and the UFC was backed into a corner publicly, and this is what they did. So, why are you angry now?
I mean, anyone who, let me say this, and I will happily include myself in this, mind you. I was not as bloodthirsty or as, zealous anti-doping crusader even back then. But I was more in the dark than I should have been, especially about USADA. I mean, how none of us, and again, I happily include myself in this, how none of us looked at boxing and boxing's relationship with USADA and didn't immediately go, we don't want this, is a little bit beyond me. How we were all that blind to it. I mean, USADA handles a lot of the boxing drug testing.
About TRT, there was always that offense where, okay, Vitor looks awesome and he's pulling off these awesome finishes, but he's using testosterone. And is this really legal? Should it be legal? Should it be allowed? And it was constantly getting brought up. And now people are practically longing for the era of TRT and TRT Vitor. So what do you want? You cannot have it both ways.
Yeah, it's a question I think every fan needs to ask themselves about this. I've said, and this has not always been my position, mind you, but this has been my position for the last, I think, year or so, maybe 2 years. My issue with people taking PEDs in MMA is that you agreed not to. I don't have an ethical. I'm not taking moral high ground about how dare you, pervert the sanctity of combat, how anything like that. Look, my thing is just the terms that were agreed to specified you compete under these terms. And you chose not to. I don't like that. I wish...
Okay.
That's my gripe. Like, I have no issue with, watching, Ryzen or I don't watch Bellator because Bellator sucks, mind you. But, Pride back in the day, I didn't have any issue watching that. Like, okay, there is no agreement about, okay, if you compete in an organization that does not drug test, okay, then, again, you're agreeing to as long as everyone knows what they're getting into and is abiding by the agreed-upon rules, I don't care. If tomorrow the UFC decided that we're going to phase out all drug testing in the UFC, I genuinely wouldn't care. I would watch just as much of it as I do now. I'm not on some kind of high horse about I will not watch or I will not consume this if there's not drug testing. Like, again, my only thing is if you agree to compete under a set of circumstances, compete under those circumstances, now, whatever they happen to be.
All right. Moving on from the whole moral, ethical dilemma of this, is there any possibility, now, regardless of USADA's ruling, that Jon Jones could be cycling or cheating, and this is just a byproduct of him trying to cycle off something, taking something he should not?
Is that possible?
Is that within the realm of possibility?
Sure. I mean, look. Okay, first of all, if we're going to get into a few of the specifics here, I haven't seen the actual data that's been released from this yet, but everyone involved is saying that the amounts found in the system of Jon Jones were measured in picograms.
Which
for those
is
of you not up on your
1/1,000,000th of a gram.
Yeah, for those of you not up on your prefixes, a picogram is 1/1,000,000th of a gram. It is
if
10 to the negative
grain of
12th.
Salt on the table and split it up into 50 million pieces, according to Jeff Nowitzki. A picogram is one of those pieces of that gram of salt. These levels have shown up in the single and double digits of picograms, so such a small amount.
Yeah, that is again. That's essentially the correct thing. If you have a grain of salt and you split it up 50 times, that's the amount.
Does that absolve John of any wrongdoing?
No, not necessarily. I mean, here's my take on this.
Okay.
Anytime you are measuring that small an amount, I genuinely wonder the degree to which it should be considered actionable evidence.
Well, apparently it was actionable enough for Tom Lawler to get...
Tom Lawler for a couple of picograms of a substance in the system.
It was 17, so it was more than 17.
A couple. Okay. So 8.5 more than a couple. So 8.5 more than a couple. That's
what he wrote on his Twitter. He could be exaggerating.
No, that was made public. Like that's documented in the you can find that.
He's saying 17 picograms of Ostarine got me 2 years.
Yeah.
Correct. Jon Jones did get suspended. He was suspended for 15 months. So it's not as long as 2 years, but he still got suspended over a year.
No, that was a different instance.
What?
Hang on. The instance that John was suspended for after the Cormier fight. I forget the exact levels he had, but it was more than it was more than picograms. The one that he was the results that led to this circumstance today were again measured in picograms.
Now this is what the MMA Junkie article says. USADA believes the test is a pulsing effect and not a new ingestion of the substance that he tested positive for after a UFC 214 win over Daniel Cormier in July 2017. Nowitzki described the amount of turinabol metabolites in Jones' system in low picogram levels. So we don't know how many. I don't think we know exactly how many picograms.
No, that has, again, like, the actual documents have not been released yet, to the best of my knowledge. So again, I'm taking all this at, this is essentially being taken at the word of the people reporting it. So you all can choose to, how much you want to, how many grains of salt you want to take with this is entirely up to you all.
I mean, look, once again, I can't fault the UFC for trying to keep the fight intact and keep the event intact. I mean, look, the UFC is going to they're going to take a big financial hit for this already, for moving the event.
Can I just say, I saw the funniest thing about this, about the UFC moving this because, they have the, I mean, they're paying to use the the T-Mobile Arena for that night. No one else is there. Somebody, I think this was it Smoggy MMA? It's just a joke account. Not it's designed around being funny. Just telling people, don't refund your tickets yet. Dana has assembled an all-star concert bill that will play before and after the pay-per-view in the arena, consisting of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Everlast, POD, Theory of a Dead Man, and Uncle Kracker.
I don't get the humor.
It's mostly, I mean, come on. You don't get the humor in those guys being, an all-star concert in 2018?
I mean, no.
Really? Everlast in 2018? Come on.
I mean, it doesn't sound that absurd to me. Red Hot Chili Peppers are a good band.
I would contest that, but not the show for
that. I like the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
That's fair. Well, look, you can enjoy them. Look, that's fine. I would contest that personally, but I don't think it's outlandish.
It's not a good joke. I'm sorry.
Come on, Everlast.
What's wrong? What do you got against Everlast?
He's terrible. Okay, how about POD? You want to defend POD?
I don't even know that group or artist.
What was their big hit? Like when I was in high school.
Oh?
Well, they did like Youth of the Nation, right?
American
It's just like the most dated list of bands ever.
All right, well, I'm just saying that joke loses credibility for putting Red Hot Chili Peppers in.
Nah, it does, because, I mean, they're 50-year-old men still parading around in their underwear with horrible man boobs.
All right, I mean, good. I mean,
just because Anthony Kiedis sits ringside at every UFC event.
I mean, hey, old man got to rock it out too sometimes. What's the big deal?
I'm just saying, you don't need to be in tighty whities to do it. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, it's part of the act.
30 years ago, when you actually had a six-pack rather than a keg, it was part of the act.
Okay, maybe that's what the fans want.
I don't know any Red Hot Chili Pepper fans, so I'll take your word for it.
I mean, do they still do the underwear thing? Is that still?
I don't think they've toured in like 10 years.
All right, so then what are you angry about?
I'm not angry about anything. I thought it was funny.
You sound angry.
I apologize if I sound angry. I'm not angry about it.
Now, here's what I don't care for. Now, this is from Ariel Hawani. He said he's talked to multiple fighters on the card, and he says, and fighters and or their reps, and every single one found out about the location change via Twitter.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Not a great look.
That's an organizational faux pas. I'm like, come on, guys.
I mean, now, maybe on one hand, I can maybe say maybe that's they're trying to avoid leaks, and they're trying to just control the flow of information, but the fighters have to make their arrangements and logistics, and this will have an impact on them. I feel like you have to do right by them and notify them in a timely manner. But whatever.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's a pretty terrible way to treat people who are going to go fist fight in a cage, and you're...
Michael Chiesa, he said this is the same way I found out, which is totally effed. So, I mean, you don't often hear Mike Chiesa going on about how badly the UFC treats him,
That's true.
So it's not a great look. And look, for all we know, Dana White could just be a figurehead these days, but WME IMG has to kind of like I think they need to get a better handle on these things. And that's just my personal opinion.
No, I completely agree. I mean, if you're worried about the flow of information, I don't think it would be that hard to get fighters or their reps to sign NDAs relative to stuff like this.
Yeah. I have to sign I mean, I'm a reporter, Robert, and I have to sign those all the time. I have to sign those to go to screenings.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes.
I mean, NDAs are very common. I think I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of athletes have them with sports teams. Actors sign them all the time.
I see Marvel and Star Wars films before about over half the world, and I can't just go spoiling everything on the internet or Reddit or Twitter. I get priority access to a lot of Netflix content that's very high level content, and you can just look at what I've published on the site for that. I've interviewed the showrunners of the Marvel Netflix shows and their stars, and I get that content like months or weeks ahead of time, and I can't write or talk about that at all because I have to sign all this paperwork basically saying if you talk about this ahead of such and such date, you're dead.
Yeah.
Or your access will get revoked, and that's fine because I agree to do that. How hard would it be to just make up a quick NDA? We're doing this right now. We need you to just sign this that you won't talk about this or leak this. Da da da.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to get a blanket one for, all fight week stuff. Like any information that you get from us, you cannot speak about until... That's
necessarily going to prevent leaks 100%, but they happen anyway.
It's a reasonable accepted step that could be taken that they're not
2 years
taking.
ago, remember the whole UFC Ariel Helwani thing?
Oh, yeah.
I know UFC was upset with Helwani over that, but it's not Ariel Helwani's fault that people are telling him this info and leaking him this info. It's the people who are leaking the info, and people have access to that info that probably shouldn't have, right? Or
leaking it, yeah.
Or we're not trustworthy. So that in and of itself is not Ariel Helwani's fault.
No, they really need to come up with some kind of system to get a handle on that, because
some sort of breach of UFC like hard drives or something, which I highly doubt.
They were hacked, man, the Russians.
But look, if a hacker hacks something and leaks that out, is someone at fault for seeing that information that's been posted publicly? Have we committed a crime?
I would argue not, but some of that will depend on the judge and depends on the material.
Right. Well, that's my stance on the leak thing. And weirdly enough, I hope I can, you know what? All this aside, I still hope I can go to this event now, because 233 got canceled in Anaheim. And it's canceled, not postponed, because they're never going to have that event, which we talked about last week.
Okay,
so,
I believe we have USADA's statement on the Jones drug test here.
It's on Twitter now.
The level reported, and this is the most relevant thing, I think, was approximately 60 picograms per milliliter. No other parent drug or other metabolites. I mean, you know what really bothers me about this? That it's relatively clear that everyone's kind of flying by the seat of their pants in some of this stuff. Like, some of the theory being
it seems it's hard to ignore. I'm not a huge Tom Lawler fan, but it's hard to ignore that it does seem like this is favoritism for John Jones.
Oh, it's USADA. Of course there's favoritism. USADA always favors and is willing to work with people at the top of a card. And this goes back, several years in boxing as well. Like, there is a clear double standard with USADA.
Well,
anyway, the last thing I want to say about
USADA but here's the result. As a result of these findings, USADA has determined Mr. Jones is not facing a violation per the UFC anti-doping policy.
Yeah.
However, sanctioning bodies for each hosting state have jurisdiction over fighter participation.
Yeah, USADA is not an official governing body over the individual states in this respect.
Taking all facts into account, are able to come to their own conclusions under their rules.
Yeah, again, look, Nevada is well within its rights to say we're not going to license John for this fight under these circumstances. That's fine. That's on them. That's not even all that unreasonable, I think.
But look, I mean, in layman's terms, none of this smells right, Robert, to me. None of it smells right. No matter what.
I don't disagree with you.
Nothing smells right about any of this, and it's hard for me to believe something fishy isn't going on here.
I generally agree. Again, part of the reason I'm torn on this is some of the logic being floated is that this is still stuff that was just in his system from the previous test.
It's not being floated, it's been outright said.
Okay. Now, here's my thing about that. There are drugs that can do that. Like, I have no problem believing that there are substances that can still show up in horribly diminished fashion a year plus after initial ingestion. That I buy that. That's a thing. I know that's a thing. With other stuff. I don't know that it's a thing with this material.
But is it there because you were already cheating or doing something wrong?
I don't know. And again, that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that while that's the working theory, hang on.
And you're saying USADA is not cleaning up this. Who is cheating that you think they are not catching?
No, they're catching people. That's not the same as cleaning it up.
Okay.
Those are profoundly different things in many respects.
Okay. Who are they not cleaning up, though?
I mean, you could argue John at this point.
Okay, fair enough.
Disagree with your argument.
Besides John Jones.
Well, I question the efficacy of suspending Tom Lawler for 2 years over that small an amount. I mean,
okay, that's different though. Who is cheating that's not catching?
Who was the other one that had a really, really light sentence handed down?
Josh Barnett?
No, Barnett. No, Barnett took them to court for 3.5 years. And got them to admit they didn't know jack about what they were accusing him of.
I don't think it was 3 years.
I don't know. It was a while. Sorry, I exaggerated.
Well, look, people worshipped Lance Armstrong for years, and those questions were always around. And, I mean, just on the surface level, nothing smells right about any of this.
No, and I would be satisfied one way or the other if I had if there was any actual scientific evidence being presented.
And let this be known here and now. I will never take a fighter at their word saying they're clean.
No,
I never
nor
will.
should you. Look, my assumption at this point is they're all on something. Look, the three fighters I enjoy watching the most in MMA right now, in the UFC specifically, Robert Whittaker, Max Holloway, Tony Ferguson. I would not be shocked at all if one of them popped.
I mean, I hope they're not. I really wish and hope they're not using anything. But I don't believe anyone at their word anymore.
No.
And I never will.
It's a good policy.
Look, I love Anderson Silva. I met Anderson Silva last week.
Yeah, you did the press conference he held, right?
Yeah. And look, we got along great. The first time I met Anderson Silva in a press capacity, it was a little... I don't like I was just one guy there, but like I got the sense he was not interested in talking to me. And here he was like really nice, conversational, was attentive to what I was saying and everything. But look, he still has those drug testing instances. No matter how you want to excuse it or talk your way around it. And Anderson Silva, I would say, look, just strictly going by the eye test, Anderson Silva's body type doesn't really look suspicious.
Never has. I mean, the most suspicious thing about Anderson was that he entered his prime performance years when he was 33, 34.
That's not necessary, but that's not necessarily impossible for athletes.
It's not impossible, but it is well outside the norm for sub-heavyweight MMA.
Maybe.
Sub-heavyweight combat sports.
Well, he wasn't a heavyweight. He was a middleweight.
I know. Again, like it's slightly different at heavyweight, but you don't see a lot of guys in their mid to late 30s doing what he was doing in MMA.
But my point is, his body type specifically didn't really look... If you talk about the eye test and the smell test, his body type didn't look all that suspicious. Not compared to, say... Gleason Tibau, who always looked...
Yeah, you could pick someone else from the same division, Nate Marquardt.
Yeah, Nate Marquardt. But Nate
somebody
Marquardt,
going right now who's got an incredibly suspicious body, Paulo Costa.
But Nate Marquardt failed pre-USADA, in the UFC, right?
I seem to recall, yeah.
Before he had the TRT level issue, the testosterone issue. And the belief about testosterone is that guys who were using it had low testosterone because they were probably abusing steroids.
Yeah, that was the theory, and that's I don't think every man over 40 who might need some testosterone replacement is not a steroid abuser, but
a lot of the fighters were under 40.
Yeah, if you're under 40. That's kind of a red flag. That's like, wait a minute. That's a weird thing. That's
my point here. So
it's a weird thing. It's not impossible, but it is weird.
All that aside, if people can wish for me to go to this event, that I'll get to cover this event, then
I hope you do. I hope they accept you. I hope you're able to attend.
Yeah.
All right, moving on from the controversy.
This is great. Michael Chiesa's at an Airbnb in Las Vegas.
Again,
MMA he was ready for the event. He got booked an Airbnb. I feel bad for the guy. I feel really.
I do too, man. Like,
you know what?
You can't satirize MMA, man. You just can't.
You know what? I hope he takes McGregor to cleaners in court.
I mean, he's asking for all of McGregor's money stemming from that incident. He's probably hoping for a settlement, and I hope he gets paid. I hope he gets paid well for that.
I hope he gets a large settlement. Like, I hope it's not just the lawyers getting rich off that, because that's.
I hope Chiesa walks away with a serious chunk of change from that, because that poor guy.
But the reason I say that is because that incident made me so angry that he took Chiesa out of his fight for that. Chiesa out of a big
Borg,
fight.
Both of them.
Yeah. I'm not okay with that, and I never have been. So.
All right. Anyway,
it's just hilarious.
Poor Chiesa. All right. Anyway,
So now we're operating under we're going to give our picks for the event under the assumption that as of now, Jones versus. I just pulled up the Wikipedia page. You saw the defeated John Jones. I mean, not quite accurate here, but amusing nonetheless.
You get some funny guys who will tweak the Wikipedia stuff like that.
But we're operating under the assumption that as of now, as of December 23rd, 2018, Gustafsson versus John Jones for the vacant UFC light heavyweight title is still happening in the main event.
For the record, if Gus decides not to, they're plugging in Ilir Latifi
or Corey Anderson.
Anderson's coming off a back-to-back. No, he's on back-to-back wins. Jeez, those were just some dull ass wins, man. I completely forgot about them.
They're
both on 2-fight winning streaks. Holy crap!
Has Anderson ever had an exciting win in the UFC?
No.
There you go. They're all last wins where Anderson is concerned.
They'll try for Latifi first, I think.
If I'm Dana White, I'm getting Shogun on the phone because he's coming off a win.
Leave Shogun alone, man. He wants none of John Jones at this point.
Yes, he wants the shot at the title. He said so.
I mean, he'd take it, but he'd also, die in the cage.
All right, but he's 4 out of his last 5. And he's a former champion in Pride in UFC.
Yeah. Shogun's legitimately like the second or third best light heavyweight of all time.
He's won this fight since he lost the title to John Jones almost 8 years ago. This is the rematch he's won in his whole career, his whole UFC career.
So he can just get massacred again.
Why not? He believes he can win.
I'm sure he does, and I'm sure Brian Ortega thought he had a chance in hell of beating Max Holloway in the 5th round of that fight.
That fight, yeah, it was March 2011, so almost 8 years ago.
Yeah,
damn.
Almost. Anyway.
All right,
so operating under the assumption that it's Jones and Gustafsson in a rematch 5 years in the making of what is, in my estimation, the best light heavyweight fight of all time. Much less best UFC light heavyweight fight of all time. Much less best.
Gustafsson arguably might have won.
Easily the closest fight of John's career. The toughest by a long shot. The Cormier fights weren't nearly that. They were competitive, but they weren't this close.
They were dominant.
the second one was a...
Jones was more dominant against Cormier in the first fight than he was against Gustafsson.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, definitely.
It was not the first time he lost a round, though.
No, he lost. I think he lost a round to Andre Gusmao in his UFC debut.
He lost a round. I'm pretty sure he lost a round to Bonner on the scorecard.
I don't think he lost a round to Bonner.
Really? Granted, this was back in 2009, so it was almost 10 years ago.
No, I don't think he lost a round in the Bonner fight.
Okay, so that was UFC 94.
I want to double check that.
No, he did.
Which
on two scorecards he did. 30-27, 29-28, 29-28.
Huh. I'll have to rewatch it.
So 2 judges gave Bonner a round in that fight.
Just and weird, because I don't think it's accurate at all, but
I would probably agree. But now let's see the Gusmao.
That was his UFC debut. What 87?
At UFC 87. One judge gave Gusmao 1 round.
Yeah.
So, to me, if it was 2, I would say yes. But it was only 1 here. So.
But certainly, I would imagine between.
Machida, I think everyone believes Machida won that first round in their fight.
I gave it to John, but Machida had a good round. Rashad Evans had a good, I think, first round against John. Vitor Belfort had a couple of a good first round. He had that really
I
tight
gave every
armbar.
round of the Rashad fight to John, as I recall. Like, solidly.
There were 2 judges who went 49-46 for Jones.
Really?
In that fight. Yeah. I think they gave. I think there was some. I think the first round was a bit iffy.
Okay, fair enough.
But it's certainly not a common occurrence for him to drop rounds. And I mean, I got a mountain of crap because I gave John I scored that fight 4-1 for John. I got.
See, look up the score.
Mountain of crap for that.
Fights. To look up scorecards for fights that weren't finished. Okay, look. Okay, I have the scorecards for Jones.
But
this is hard. I'm sorry, this is hard. But yeah, I think I gave that for the first round. The first round of Jones versus Machida, I gave to Machida. And I thought that was fair.
I don't think, again, I gave it to John, but I don't think it's wrong. It was a close round.
Now look, I scored the first fight with Gustafsson Jones for Jones. I gave the first 2 rounds to Gustafsson. I gave rounds 3, 4, and 5 to Jones. Just because in the second half, look, if you're a challenger, nonetheless, and I'm not saying this is fair, but nonetheless, if you're slowing down in the second half, that's not a good look for the judges to convince them that you won the fight. You know what I mean?
I do.
In a title situation.
Now, if memory serves, in my official coverage, I gave John the first, Gus the second, Jones 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
I'd have to double check that. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've rewatched the fight. I'm not sure how much I stand by the first round. Going to John, I'm really not. I have to rewatch it.
Now, a big factor here is size and strength. Gustafsson is probably he's one of the few guys who can deal with, because he's a big guy himself, he can deal with the size and strength of John Jones. The question is, can he deal with it for 5 rounds this time?
There's a weird thing about Gustafsson's game that I think it was Jack Slack I saw point this out. When Gustafsson fights someone of the average size at light heavyweight, he looks awkward. Like, just nothing he does seems to really work. You question all the decisions he makes. Like, why aren't you fighting longer? Why aren't you, why are you ducking so much? What, et cetera, et cetera. Didn't you watch him fight John?
He hasn't really been stellar these last several years since the first fight with Jones, quite frankly. Since that fight with Jones, he's only had 5 fights.
Yeah, he's been inactive.
3 and 2. He knocked out Jimmy Manuwa.
Yep.
Coming off the Jones fight, which was impressive for him. Then he got knocked out in the first round by Johnson.
Anthony Johnson.
Had that close title fight with Cormier.
Yep.
And then
took about a year off, beat Jan Blachowicz via uninspired decision, took another year off, not quite a year off that next time.
Right.
And it was a while, though. And then
he knocked out Glover Teixeira, but Glover Teixeira, 39 years old at that point, if you want to talk about the smell test. But
I mean, and that was not a competitive fight. He just abused Glover Teixeira for that whole fight.
Look, ever since that first loss to Phil Davis by submission, he went on a tear. He went on a tear to get a shot at the title.
Yeah, he tore some people up.
He was very deserving of that shot at the title. I don't think you could. I think some people at the time questioned it, but I don't know how you could.
I was underwhelmed by the matchup on paper more than I thought he didn't deserve it, type of thing. Like, okay, he's won these fights.
You want to know why? Because everyone thought John Jones was just going to run through him, and he didn't. And and there's also the perception that John Jones says he didn't train hard for that fight. Like, you saw those selfie photos of him before the fight, and he was like out of shape. Apparently, and he still won. So, I mean, what does that say about Gustafsson, Robert?
I think it says more about John than it does about Gus. I mean,
Well,
Gus
to me,
is...
it just says that, like, Gustafsson on his best day can't beat, like, a less prepared and less prepped John Jones.
I don't know. Gus on very nearly his best day arguably beat Daniel Cormier, who was... And look, Daniel Cormier is not a guy who trains half-assed.
Okay, but it was still a fairly close fight. It was still close. It was close enough to make an argument, right?
I mean...
You say yeah, but I mean, I scored that fight for Cormier.
I've always scored that fight for Gustafsson.
Well, I mean, look. To me, that's the problem here. Gustafsson on his best day is not capable of winning a title. And quite frankly, his attitude for this fight bugs me because I just don't believe he's getting worked up or passionate about the fact that he's fighting for a UFC title at all. I don't think he really even cares. I think he's got a wife or he's got a girlfriend and a kid, and he's just trying to make the money now.
No, they're married.
Did he get married?
At least they're engaged because he proposed to her in the cage.
Proposed to her. I'm not sure if they got married though.
At a minimum, they're engaged.
That was the second time he got engaged to someone. Like I remember the last time he was engaged to someone, it was a totally different woman. So, there you go.
As for the fight itself, I don't know, man. I'm leaning towards John.
Of course.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to fully qualify.
On his best day, he can't beat Jones on his worst day, and I believe that. I'm sorry.
That's fair.
Sorry, but that's what I believe.
Now, I think John's in some respects gotten better since their first fight. I hope he's not partying ahead of this one.
John is not. I wouldn't call him an elite class striker, but he knows how to use his timing and his range, and he has those dynamic, unorthodox strikes. Like he will throw in like a spinning elbow or a head kick, and I don't think Gustafsson will be able to deal with that.
Now, I'm very excited for the fight because, again, their first fight is one of my all-time favorites. But, I mean, Jones has been more active than Gustafsson.
Well, that's not the only thing. Jones is unbeaten in 11 title fights.
Yep.
Unbeaten in 11 title fights.
Jones's only loss was the old disqualified for kicking too much ass thing.
Right.
I mean, it's the same way that, for years Fedor only had that one loss that was due to weird circumstances. We all kind of knew he was undefeated for a long time. Jones is kind of in that same space right now. Like, okay, we know there's an L on his record. We all know why it's there. It's weird. It's not replicable. In a lot of respects, he's undefeated.
Now, I feel like if Gustafsson had, the cardio and the game plan, he could. I think he has the physique and he has like the skills that he could beat Jones. I just don't think he's going to be able to do it because Jones is that.
There's things about his game that the biggest thing that gave John trouble, this is the weirdest thing, but like the most trouble that John had with him in their first fight was just Gustafsson's movement.
Well, he came out and he took him down.
Well, but look at how he did it. It is the much more relevant thing.
But no one expected that. Everyone was poo-pooing this fight and thought Gustafsson was going to get torn apart. And that didn't happen. So...
Now, again, like the biggest thing was just his movement because a lot of those like side kicks or oblique kicks that he
knows how to use his size. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, again, like...
Not as long as John, but let's see how
he's an inch taller.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of fighters don't know how to use their mass, and Gustafsson, I would say, does fairly well with his mass. Wouldn't you agree?
He does better with his size against someone of comparable size than he does against someone shorter than he is.
Okay, but look, his only losses are to John Jones, Cormier, Anthony Johnson, and Phil Davis.
And you can kind of set the Phil Davis one aside, given how long ago it was.
All in the UFC.
Yeah.
All in the UFC. He's never lost outside of the UFC. So.
Yep. Now, I think if John has learned to deal with the lateral movement of Gustafsson, that was Gustafsson's biggest thing, was just, okay, you're going to throw a side kick at my knee, assuming that I'm coming forward. Instead, I'm going to slip to the side. Suddenly, you're off balance. I mean, that's where that takedown comes from. John throws a side kick a little bit off balance. As Gus is moving in a circle, Gus catches it and gets him down because of it. And even then, it takes a second effort.
All right, so assuming the fight happens, I'm just going to pick John Jones by TKO in the fourth.
Now, I got John by decision. I still don't think he hits hard enough to really finish Gus, but could be wrong about that. All right, your co-main event is
another fight.
What?
Well, it's the Cyborg title.
Yeah, it's another. I mean, look, the last two, because you had Joanna versus Valentina, a couple of weeks ago. This is the other women's fight that is, I think, one of the better women's MMA fights you can make, just generally speaking. You have at featherweight Chris Cyborg defending the title against Amanda Nunes, who is the bantamweight champion, coming up to try to become the first ever women's simultaneous two-division champion, much less simultaneous.
Oh, they already took out the USADA defeated John Jones. I'm sad.
They don't stick around long, but you get a few funny ones. I mean, there was a time when any time Artem Lobov was fighting, if you refreshed at the right time, you could see him winning via flying Gogo Plata choke.
That's funny.
Again, you get some funny guys.
I
go back and forth.
Amanda Nunes, look at this resume. Valentina Shevchenko twice. Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey. So, I mean, if she could add Cyborg to that list, that would be pretty spectacular.
I think at that point there's a very compelling argument that she's the women's MMA GOAT.
Well, she would be if you even consider this an actual title, she would be a two-division champion, and she'd have wins over 3 UFC champions, and she'd have 2 belts. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So she's already defended. She's defended her title 3 times already. So. She's on her way.
Ronda, Valentina, and then punching bag.
Pennington. And the only thing is if I know you thought Shevchenko won that fight. It was a close fight. It was a split decision.
I mean, look, I stand by. I think Shevchenko won, but I also do have to live in reality where the decision went Nunes' way. Again, you ask me who won the fight, I still say it's Shevchenko. But
I thought Nunes won the fight or a draw.
Which is also, I mean,
not a lot happened in that fight. I felt like Shevchenko could have done more.
She probably could have. I mean, the fact that that head and arm throw she went through at the end of the 5th is probably what cost her that title.
And look, she beat Sarah McMahon, and Sarah has not really amounted to a whole lot in MMA, but Sarah McMahon is an Olympic caliber wrestler. She's an Olympic
silver medalist, yeah.
Well, I mean, to be able to submit a fighter like that to me, that's also impressive.
No, Amanda has a really, really good resume. I'm a little bit surprised she gets as overlooked as she does.
She's well-rounded. That's another thing. So, being said, I'm picking Cyborg for this fight.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth a little bit on this because Nunes is a good puncher, but Nunes is basically Cyborg for bantamweight. A lot of her success, not all of it, but a lot of her success is predicated on physical presence, being a heavy puncher, and being good enough everywhere else to just kind of deal with it. And she's just now going up against essentially a bigger version of herself. And size isn't everything, but it is a thing. And I don't think Nunes has ever fought someone appreciably larger than herself, has she?
I'd have to. I don't think she. I mean,
because she's a big bantamweight.
Let's see, because she's 5'8". I mean, 5'8" for a female bantamweight, that's pretty.
She's on the large side for that division. I don't mean fat. I mean like she's tall
bigger,
for the division.
No, yeah, she's tall. Because I would say Rousey and Tate were both Rousey was an inch shorter, has an inch shorter in reach.
Yeah, Rousey's an inch shorter.
Misha's also shorter.
Yeah.
Has less reach.
So yeah, she's probably been the bigger woman in all of her UFC fights.
Yeah, even against Kat Zingano, where she did lose, she was the bigger fighter.
Yeah, which she used to her advantage for that first round before gassing out, and she's worked on that. But
I mean, she's made improvements.
Yeah, she has. The only question I have about her cardio is how it will hold up when the fight isn't fought at her pace, which is not unique to her. There's a lot of guys who can fight for 5 rounds, even 5 hard rounds, if it's at the pace they want to fight at.
Right, because, I mean, Shevchenko went all 5, and Shevchenko wasn't really...
Shevchenko doesn't push the pace. That's just not her style. That's not her style. It's not her game plan.
And Pennington was just...
I mean, that may as well have been sparring.
That might have even gone to the 5th round.
No, that fight should have been stopped between rounds 4 and 5. B, again, Amanda dictated everything about that fight, and there's a lot of guys. I mean, bear in mind, there's plenty of fighters who can't fight 5 rounds even at their own pace.
Right.
So being able to fight 5 rounds at your pace is still a significant thing.
But the cardio is a good point, because going back further in her career, the cardio was a big question for Nunes. She has clearly worked on that and improved her cardio in her gas tank.
Yeah.
But now she's fighting Cyborg, who is bigger and stronger than her. Cyborg also has, I think you would agree, a fairly good... she has good cardio.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, she didn't get tired, and, I mean, we can all joke about, clinch fighting being boring. Clinch fighting is very grueling. She, the home fight, she spent a lot of that in the clinch and didn't get tired at all.
So... I don't think Nunes might not quite gas out in this fight, but I think Cyborg will dictate the pace, and I think she will wear out Nunes ultimately.
I mean, and again, I agree with your point. There's a difference between gassing out and just being worn down.
Yeah.
Brian Ortega against Holloway just got worn down. It's not that his cardio's bad, but there's a difference between having good cardio, even in a fight, and having good cardio after you get bludgeoned.
Well, I mean, I fully believe Ortega would have gone out swinging and answered that 5th round against Holloway.
Oh yeah, when Brian Ortega says he was willing to die out there, he means it, and I believe him.
But
Max Holloway was probably willing to kill him.
It wasn't that he was gassing; he was just beat up. He was beat to hell.
Yeah, you just get worn down in a fight. That's what happens. It's a physical consequence of the action that's taking place.
I'm picking Cyborg by a very dominant decision, like a 50-45 decision.
Yeah, I got Cyborg as well. Again, I don't want to count Nunes out completely because, again, she's a good puncher and she actually throws straight punches. I mean,
she's powerful. I would like to see her try to get Cyborg to the mat if she can, because...
This is one of those fights where I think they're both going to be hesitant about that because whoever's on top is going to win. They both have jiu-jitsu credentials.
Yeah, that's.
But they're both top players. Neither one of them has a great guard or a really great sweeping game.
That's sort of my thing. I want to see what happens because we don't see the ground game of these fighters a lot. Amanda Nunes, at least recently, we haven't seen a whole lot of it.
I mean, she had Pennington's back for stretches of time in that fight. Cyborg took down...
Right.
She's taken down... Well, she's punched her opponents down and then just, again, beat them to death on the ground.
But even the Misha fight was 2.5 years ago at this point. So I would like to see a little more grappling in this fight, but I don't expect the fight to go there. But
I just don't think either of them is going to risk getting countered on a takedown attempt and winding up on bottom. Again, it's not that they're incompetent in that area. It's just, okay, do I really want to be under this other person if this doesn't go my way? And
I agree.
Where that risk calculation comes in. I mean, we saw that with like Jacare and Weidman too, right? Like you have one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in MMA history against a legitimate All-American wrestler with a really great submission background of his own in Weidman, and they both just kind of went, it's not worth getting countered trying to take you down.
I didn't want Rock'em Sock'em Robots in that fight.
That's probably my third or fourth best fight of the year right now. It was a great fight.
It was a great fight.
All
Speaking of great fights,
we don't have any more on this card.
We have medical equipment, coffee seller Carlos Condit versus Michael Chiesa making his debut at welterweight.
A few years ago, I might have gone with Condit here, because Chiesa's.
Chiesa. I mean, look, Chiesa's a really decent grappler, submission guy.
Chiesa's there's a lot. Again, I might have leaned Condit just because Chiesa gets torn up. Like, his face marks up.
Right. True.
But Condit of today, I think Chiesa...
No takedown defense. Condit didn't have takedown defense 10 years ago when he was a relevant welterweight.
No, but he had a different guard back then, too, than he uses now. I mean, I just think Chiesa kind of bullies him into the fence, gets a body lock, gets a takedown. And it just kind of works itself out from there.
I don't know if this is real, but John Jones and DC are getting into it again on Twitter.
Piss on both of them.
John Jones just tweeted, I could slap your wife on the ass and you could literally do nothing about it. You're my blank DC. That will never change. Funny how you're giving me 2 posts but said nothing when I asked you to come get your belt back. DC.
No.
John Jones, you
just
couldn't
leave those two, man.
You steroid abusing junkie. I swear I would never touch your wife's flat ass. LOL, and I didn't respond. I'm not helping you sell your bum ass fight, you drug abusing steroid cheat. F you.
Yeah, Daniel Cormier, stand-up guy.
He didn't need to insult John Jones's wife like that. Come on.
Well, I mean, it's nice that he's, we haven't gotten past the intimation that. No, you know what? I'm not going to say it. I don't want the crap that would bring. I'm not saying it.
If you're John Jones's wife, aside from the money, I imagine what she has to put up with. I mean, the woman's been embarrassed and humiliated enough being. I don't even know if they're even officially married, being with John Jones.
No, they're married, I'm pretty sure.
So when did they get married?
I don't know. I just seem to...
They've been engaged. They've been engaged for like 20 years. I mean, come on.
That might be true. I want to say I'd seen...
Like, I remember watching John Jones on MMA Live in 2008, and he called this woman, who's the mother of his children, his fiance, and they've been not married for like 10 years.
Okay.
So show me the document.
No, you're probably correct. Again, I suppose it's just my. Maybe it's just my upbringing. There's a bit of old-fashioned in me.
Sometimes you have long engagements, yes, but I mean this long, and I mean you have 3 kids with this woman.
Look, man, if you've been engaged more than about 8 months, I think you're dragging your feet. But I'm also LDS, and our thing is no sex before marriage, and you must have 8 kids.
He doesn't. He probably doesn't want. He's probably worried about divorce and having to be in a Michael Jordan situation.
It's a fair concern. I mean, I still don't like it again, but so look, I said this a while ago. I'm just sick to death of the John and DC show, the Dog and Pony show that is those two.
All I'm saying is DC didn't need to insult. He didn't need to insult a woman like that, is all I'm saying. Not that I'm a white knight or whatever. I would just say I would not have said that about another man's girlfriend, wife, whatever. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, nuts to those two, man. Those two. Again, like I just have no desire to see them interact with each other under any circumstances ever again. Like,
Mike Chiesa by submission.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I like
rear naked choke probably in the first.
Condit is a shell of his former self.
He really is.
And quite frankly, I think he probably should have. He had one foot out the door. I don't know why he's still fighting.
I'm a little surprised by it myself. Again, I have a lot of fond memories of Condit's fights, but
so do I.
And I still maintain he got kind of screwed in that Lawler fight. I absolutely stand by that. But
my theory is he's just doing this to get seed money for his startup companies.
And you know what? If he is, more power to him. You know, if that's what he's doing, if he knows that's what he's doing.
His record. Look at his record. He's 0-4 right now.
Yep.
And he's
been finished in most of those, hasn't he?
1-5. He's 1-5 in his last 6. Well, he was finished by Oliveira by submission. Lost by decision to Neil Magny in a 3-round fight. Submitted by Damian Maia, and then before that was the Lawler fight.
Okay.
After the Magny fight, you were like, I never want to see him fight again.
I believe that was accurate. And in fairness, when I say more power to him, if this is how he wants to get seed money for his businesses, fine. That doesn't mean I'm interested in watching. I mean, I'm genuinely not interested in this fight.
But if you're Chiesa, I mean, this is the perfect fight for your welterweight debut.
Yeah. It's a guy whose weaknesses play into your strengths, and it's a guy who hasn't looked good in a really long time.
But it's also, even though it's a guy who's on a losing streak, it's still Carlos Condit. His name still has weight, even at this point in his career. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, there's still some weight behind his name. I mean, it got Alex Oliveira a couple of bigger opportunities.
You know,
I mean, in fairness, it got Chiesa coming off of an embarrassing loss onto the main card of a pay-per-view.
I like Carlos Condit, but unless he does some drastic changes, I just don't think he's ever going to become that top-level fighter again.
Oh, geez, a 2-fight... Okay, yeah, Chiesa's on a 2-fight losing streak. He was finished in both of them, and quite frankly, the Pettis loss was, again, on the embarrassing side.
Well, what about the Kevin Lee? Wasn't there some controversy over the Lee submission?
There was controversy about the referee. Just because the ref might have stopped it a second or two early, because Chiesa was in Chiesa was locked into a rear naked choke.
But he didn't submit or tap out.
He did not tap out, and he didn't quite go all the way unconscious.
Right.
Again, like we talked about at the time, it was just an error by the ref, but he was pretty much done in that situation.
I think that was kind of the case with remember the Velasquez-Rothwell fight from 2009? That was sort of the feeling I got from that fight, but people were still pissy about, I think, the fight getting stopped early.
Yeah, I kind of remember that, yeah. Again, it was the same kind of thing. Like, okay, if the ref doesn't stop it, do we really think Chiesa's getting out of that?
True, but there is always that, like, 0.001% chance. Fighters have gotten out of rear naked chokes, Robert. It's
but
possible.
Usually
it's
not when they're at the position that one was in.
Correct, but it is possible.
Again, we talked about it at the time. The ref screwed up, but I don't think he changed the outcome of the fight necessarily.
But Chiesa has pulled off some impressive submissions in the UFC. That's undeniable.
Yeah, he's caught a couple of really nice rear naked chokes.
Ally Quinta. Ally Quinta was probably the favorite to win that fight.
I seem to recall, yes.
Jim Miller and Dariush.
The Miller one was really nice, and yeah, the Dariush one, that was in the second round, right? Yeah, because Dariush kind of took him to the cleaners in the first round and then faded.
I'm not sure I see Chiesa becoming a contender, but I think he could be he could make some noise. We'll see.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, he'll be healthier than he was at lightweight, because he was a big lightweight.
Was he that big for the division?
Oh yeah, He's
6'1", so okay.
He's 6'1", and he has a 76-inch reach.
It's weird, because I met him in person on Fight Week for the finale, and he didn't seem that big. But we were sitting down.
No, like if you just see you need a picture of him in proper context. I mean, look how much bigger he was than Anthony Pettis.
Okay.
And Pettis is an average lightweight, give or take. I mean, he was a big, and he was kind of a meaty guy.
Cerrone's a big lightweight too.
Yeah, but look at where they carry their weight. Is kind of the other thing. You know, Chiesa's really rangy. Cerrone's tall, but Chiesa's got these really long, kind of beefy limbs.
Well, we'll see. I'm very curious to see how he's going to perform.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't expect Condit to have a fire lit under him, but you never know.
I hope he does, because Carlos Condit actually firing on all cylinders is a lot of fun.
It is, but
I don't expect it though. I'm with you there.
Just looks so. I mean, he looks so flat against Magny.
Oh yeah, and the Oliveira fight was just.
I mean, against Magny, not that Magny's a scrubber. Magny is not a pushover. He is not.
No.
But he just looked he just looked dull, flat, and he looked a step behind Magny everywhere in that fight.
Yeah. All right, next up, I hope you like fence wrestling.
The backup fighters, the alternate fighters for the main event.
Aliou Latifi will fight Corey Anderson. This fight's
the alternate contenders fight.
Yeah, this is a pretty terrible fight. Again, there's a lot of wrestling from both guys.
I kind of like Aliou Latifi though, Robert. I kind of like Latifi though.
Okay. That's fine. Like, there's things about, like, outside of fighting, he's kind of a likable guy. His fights just kind of suck.
I think he's a decent. I don't think his fights are that bad. He's had some decent performances throughout his career.
Yeah. Hang on. I'm not sure I'm going to give you that one.
He's 7-3.
He is. He got a winning record, and the way he beat OSP was hilarious.
I mean, I thought him dominating Tyson Pedro was pretty impressive. He was not. Pedro was he was probably favored to win that fight, I think.
Only by people who hadn't seen how bad Pedro's takedown defense was.
Yeah, but I mean, like, Pedro was like the prospect people were getting behind for that fight.
I'm torn on this one. I suppose I'll go with Latifi, but I'm not sure. I don't know, man.
I'm going with Corey Anderson by grinding, boring decision.
Yeah, this is your bathroom break fight. Kicking off the main card, we have a surprisingly good featherweight fight. Chad Mendes.
So you were wrong when you said there are no more good fights on this card.
I said there were no more great fights.
Oh, come on. That's not what you...
hang on. If you want me to pick, like, seriously, if you want me to pick a couple of other good fights, Mendes Volkanovski's a good fight, and Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Peter Yan is a really good fight.
This has potential to be a great fight.
Mendes and Volkanovski, I'm really looking forward to.
This could turn out to be Zingano Mangan Anderson could be a great fight.
No.
All right, you're just play a hate.
Look, Zingano hasn't had a really good fight in.
Okay.
Since the Nunes fight. Because the Rousey fight was 12 seconds.
14 seconds.
Whatever. The Pena fight was not good. The Vieira fight was not good. And the Marion Renault fight was not good.
Okay. It's within the realm of possibility, I would say.
I will not say it's impossible.
All right.
But anyway.
As long as you say that.
Again, like, this is all just on paper. Like, they could show up and have great fights. Like, I'm not discounting the possibility. I'll be surprised, is all.
I feel good about picking Mendes here, quite frankly.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't pick against Mendes all that often, just generally speaking.
Volkanovski, I mean, he looks like he could be...
Volkanovski is legit, but this is a significant step up in competition for him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's undefeated. He's, overall, he's 5-0 in the UFC.
Right.
beat Darren
he's
Elkins his last time out.
And Elkins, not a pushover, but a very, a tough, never say die type opponent. That's a good win.
I tend to think that Mendez is just a better version of Volkanovski right now. Like they have similar builds, they have similar skill sets.
Mendez had the reputation of being a very boring, grinding wrestler. Then he started getting better and started putting guys to sleep. He has knockout power.
Yeah.
He's not, and he's well-rounded. He's not really like a stand-in wing type of fighter. He had one of the better performances, I think, against Jose Aldo in a title fight before Aldo faced McGregor and Holloway.
Oh yeah, the second fight between Aldo and Mendez is a tremendous fight.
Because he came up with an excellent counter to Aldo's leg kicks, which no one was really doing before. And I think he didn't get enough credit for that.
It pains me to pick Mendez here, but I think I'm going to.
Yeah. You and your prejudices.
Hey, I'm honest about him. Not a fan of Mendez. I like watching him get knocked out.
I don't think that makes it okay for me, but...
I mean, look, I don't have anything against him in the... If I start wishing for him to be hit by a bus or something, yeah. I'm happy to revisit the nature of my prejudice. The fact that there are fighters I like and fighters I don't like within the confines of fighting, I think is just how everyone is. Like, there's this guy. I don't like this guy. I want to see him knocked out.
But
okay.
If Mendez wins here, he's in a very good position. Because Aldo is sort of winding down. Really, it's almost like that kind of 2-year break was sort of like a good thing for him because the division went through all that chaos and it kind of had a chance to reset itself, So he could be right back in contention sooner rather than later, don't you think?
It's possible. I think there's a couple of better fights to determine.
As long as he stays healthy and competitive within the division, because I mean, he came back and he looked like $1 million from a very long layoff. Like he was
from that 2-year suspension.
I mean, his last fight was in December 2015, so
yeah,
he was away.
He had a lot. Yeah, he was suspended for a chunk of that.
2.5 years.
I mean, part of that is he beat Miles Jury, and Miles Jury's a perpetual underachiever.
Right.
But yeah, if he wins here, he's in a good spot. I don't think he'll be in as good a spot as, very specifically, if Renato Moicano beats Jose Aldo, I think Moicano's your next title challenger.
What about Frankie?
What about Frankie?
I mean, shouldn't Frankie be in the conversation as well?
What was the last thing he did? Didn't he just beat up Yair? Or has he fought since what was the last thing Frankie did? I can't remember the order of some of these.
He won a big fight after the loss to Ortega.
Ortega knocked him out. What did he do after that?
He beat Cub Swanson. There you go.
Okay, he had the rematch with Swanson. Okay, that's it.
And that was a little while ago.
It was April of this year.
And he does have a knockout win over Mendez already.
He knocked him out pretty cold. He's out right now. He tore his bicep. He was supposed to fight Korean Zombie in November.
We need some sort of. We need to keep Frankie in the conversation because he's due for a big. Because he's number 3 and he's due for a big fight. So
we'll see what happens. We'll see how he recovers from the injury.
And we don't know what's going to happen with Max Holloway right now either. That's the other thing. So
that's true.
Title could be vacated. Interim title city, babe. Chaos.
Quite frankly, Mendez and Ortega is an interesting fight in a lot of ways.
I would not be
rooting for Volkanovski, not just because it's Chad Mendez, but also because I just like Volkanovski, man. I mean, again, irrespective of his opponent, I've been kind of on his bandwagon for a little bit.
He's done well so far.
Yeah, I'm picking Mendez, but
let's see, where's he's ranked number 10 right now, and I think I don't think that's bad to rank him number 10.
No, that's probably about right.
I think it's because when you beat someone when you dominate Darren Elkins, that's pretty. Because let's see, Elkins is like a perennial top 15 guy, basically.
Yeah, Volkanovski was, I think, number 14 going into that fight.
That was his 5th UFC win, and he's 18-1. He hasn't lost in 5 years, so yeah, I was fine with that. And maybe he shouldn't quite be number 10, but whatever.
It's close enough. I mean, it's within 2 spots, so I'm not gonna.
Mendes is number 5. If he beats Mendes, he's gonna pretty much be in the top 5 or really shoot up, and that kind of has to put him in the title conversation at that point.
Very near it, yeah.
Because to me, if you're in the top 5, to me, anyone in the top 5 can validly be in the title conversation, in my opinion. Is pretty much what the top 5 means. Is that fair?
I don't think that's unreasonable.
I think in most divisions that's what it would mean. Except for maybe light heavyweight.
Now, light heavyweight, if you are signed to the UFC, they can throw you into the title picture.
Ilir Latifi could be fighting for the title next weekend. We'll see.
Ilir Latifi is going to wind up fighting Shogun for the interim belt.
I would love that.
I would hate that fight so much because it would be so bad.
All right. So
anyway, that's your main card for pay-per-view.
It's not terrible as far as main card.
It's very top-heavy, but I can live with it. As for the prelims,
something tells me though we're not done with the chaos for this week is only just starting.
No. Look, again, something else is going to happen. We're going to get a plane that has to be diverted and screws up someone's weight cut.
I mean, you.
No, like we're gonna get some. If you're gonna make an MMA like Christmas movie, set it around this card, and just you get like a Home Alone-esque sequence where someone's just trying to get to the venue on time. Some poor fighter trying to cut weight while driving down the interstates of California after their flight got redirected from L.A. to Sacramento.
I mean, Kies is probably in that situation right now. He was already in Vegas renting out a bed, like an Airbnb, to prepare for his fight. He's probably, even though he's moving up, he's probably still cutting weight.
You know. I mean, Mendes and Volkanovski both have relatively well-timed weight cuts. I mean, they could both probably fight one division lower necessarily if they dropped muscle mass, but they're very much, they have their weight cuts down, but they've got to be on top of them. There's a few others, man. So anyway, on the prelims, we have Andrei Arlovsky versus Walt Harris in your just why fight of the evening. Harris is coming off of a win. Good for him.
How is Arlovsky even still fighting?
He's on a 2-fight losing streak, but won 2 in a row before that. I mean, lost several in a row before that.
Yeah, that means in 9 fights he's 2-7.
Yep.
Which to me is abysmal. But
but he's gonna have to lose at least 2 more before the UFC will cut him in a row.
I don't think the UFC would cut him.
And in fairness, I'm not sure he loses this fight. I don't think Walt Harris is all that good.
Walt Harris is coming off a win.
Sure, but his overall UFC record is still losing, I believe.
But he's fighting Arlovsky, who can basically, you can just touch his chin and he will go down.
Maybe. I mean, he hasn't been knocked. Arlovsky hasn't even really been knocked down in his last couple of fights. I mean, Harris's win was over Daniel Spitz.
As I recall, his 2 wins before he lost to Tuivasa and Abdurakhimov were awful. Those fights first with Albini.
Struve and Albini? No, they weren't good fights, but he won.
He won, but like I recall Albini was like a candidate for worst fight of the year?
That was 17. No, it
November.
was more boneheaded decision making than worst fight of the year.
Okay.
There were some really bad fights last year. Oh god. So there's that. There's a women's featherweight fight between Megan Anderson and Kat Zingano.
I don't hate it.
I don't hate this fight either. Anderson coming off of that loss to Holm in her UFC debut. Zingano just broke a 3 or 4 fight losing streak when she beat Marion Renault. This is a solid enough fight. I don't know where to go here, though. I'll go with Zingano. I've got kind of a soft spot for her. Your fight of the prelims that I'm going to tell you all right now to watch. Douglas Silva de Andrade and Peter Yan. Peter Yan is 2-0 in the UFC. He is 10-1 overall. That one loss was a very close split decision that he avenged a fight later. Yan is... I'm a fan of this guy. This is a violence bringer. And as is Douglas Silva de Andrade, whose only 2 losses in the UFC are to Zubaira Tuhugov and Rob Font. He's 3-2 overall. This is again, a lot of people are going to sleep on this one, but this is your sleeper fight of the evening, guys. And I like Peter Yan.
Uriah Hall's on this card, though.
Yeah, I don't care.
That's not really what if you had said like ick or like grunted or I don't know, that would have been better.
Better than just I don't care about Uriah Hall at this point. We have BJ Penn, the prodigy, the prodigal son, the fighting pride of Hawaii.
BJ Penn is not fighting. It's his reanimated corpse.
Look, I'm not telling you how I reanimated his corpse and now forced it to take abuse for my amusement. I am going to say that it was me. Penn is fighting Ryan Hall. They are at lightweight, so at least Penn isn't killing himself with a weight cut.
The way he might be. We don't know what he's walking around at these days, Robert.
Also true. But BJ Penn hasn't won a fight since 2010 when he beat over-the-hill Matt Hughes.
When did Ryan Hall last win a fight?
Ryan Hall won his last fight when he defeated Gray Maynard, right?
That was
December of 16.
2 years ago.
Hang on. In fairness to Hall, the reason he hasn't been fighting is because no one will sign to fight him.
Why?
Oh, because
He's
his
not
fights
that good.
No, his fights are boring. Like, let's be very clear about this. Both of his fights, his win over Artem Lobov and his win over Gray Maynard, are not that interesting to watch.
He's not Anderson Silva.
No, I mean, Ryan Hall's the worst kind of guy to fight because no one knows who he is. The fight's not going to look good, and there's a real chance that he winds up destroying your knee.
There aren't maybe some tough dudes on the lower card who would want to have that fight. I find that hard to believe.
Well, that and the UFC doesn't like him. And if the UFC doesn't like you, they don't try to book you fights anyway.
Well,
no, I would have loved to just have a...
There's no excuse for him not having fought in 2 years. I'm sorry.
Look, again, I just don't think the UFC offers him fights because they don't like him at all.
I would need proof to believe that.
I think he's talked about it.
I mean, fighters say stuff like that all the time.
What, the UFC is going to refute it? Unless they have specific evidence to the contrary. If he's telling the truth, they're not going to go out and just...
Again, I would need to see evidence.
I forget what show it was, but yeah, about 6 months ago, I think he was on. I can't remember if it was the MMA Hour or just Helwani's show or something like that. And just somebody asked him, like, "We haven't seen you in a while. What's up?" And he just says they won't offer me fights.
Okay, but I mean, but here's my problem about that. Fighters go on to those things and they're like, "Oh, I want this fight, I want that fight," and then they get Joe Rogan's microphone and they're like, "Oh, I'll fight whoever."
Yeah. Again, I'm not, and that's very true.
That's why. Look, that's why I don't take that as gospel, and I take all of that with a grain of salt. I need more.
Look,
I need more to go on. I need more.
If there was any kind of injury talk, it's No one's heard it. I don't think he's been injured. I think he's been active. He's been teaching. I just don't think the UFC has offered him a fight.
Well, he is a horrible fighter, so...
He's not horrible. He's just not aesthetically pleasing. Those aren't the same thing.
I said...
Again, the fight with Gray Maynard was one of the most bizarre things you'll see if you don't know what you're looking at. And even if you do know what you're looking at, it's still kind of weird.
The fight with Artem Lobov was garbage.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible.
And I knew what I was looking at, so...
Oh, no, I meant the Maynard fight specifically.
I'm going to say this, Ryan Hall does no favors for himself.
No, not really.
So...
I expect Ryan Hall to heel hook BJ Penn in this fight.
BJ Penn is not good from the bottom, and he never has been.
He used to be. He used to have really good sweeps. He used to have a really good sweep game. But that was...
It was really his top game that was so
That was
formative.
12 years ago. 12 years ago, he had a pretty good sweep game. Not since.
But his top game was always vicious.
Yeah, it used to be. Then there was the Seaver fight, and I can't even say he has a good top game anymore.
I mean... but he's so far gone at this point, to me, it's not even the same person.
I don't think you should sanction this fight if you're California.
After Dana White made that big show about Oscar De La Hoya on ESPN, I don't think he should be allowed to step into the cage.
No, I don't either. And again, I think Ryan Hall. I think we're going to see BJ Penn get submitted. I really do. Then on Fight Pass, we have Andre Ewell and Nathaniel Wood. Why are the Brits fighting? Why is it? Because I'm pretty sure this is Brit versus Brit. They've both fought in the UFC. I'm going with Wood. We have Uriah Hall against Akan, which is about 50-50 that he still loses that fight. Because Uriah Hall. Bevan Lewis, does he come from the Contender Series? I need to know this before I decide who I'm picking here, actually. Because if that's where he comes from, I might just pick him out of spite because I'm sick of Uriah Hall.
I'm picking Bevan Lewis against Uriah Hall. Why not?
See. Yeah, he's from the Contender Series.
If he's fighting, I'm always going to pick opposite.
He's fought twice on the Contender Series. He's undefeated overall. He's fought in the LFA a lot. Yeah, no, Lewis, screw Hall. I'm sick of Uriah Hall being in the UFC. Go away.
He's 1-4 in his last 5.
Oh God, he is, isn't he? And he was losing that fight too against Yatko before Yatko gassed himself out.
13-9, and he's 13-9.
Ugh. Curtis Millender fights Siar Bahadurzada.
That's what I wanted you to say earlier. When I mentioned Uriah, I wanted you to say ugh.
Just ugh. Uriah Hall.
That's what you need. That's how you need to always react to Uriah Hall.
Can I just slam my hand in a car door or something instead of... Your UFC, I will break my own hand if you will cut Uriah Hall. That's all I'm saying. Curtis Millender versus Siar Bahadurzada that's got some potential. Not a lot, but a little.
That could be a good fight.
Millender is 2-0 in the UFC. He's not lost since 2015. Millender's a long guy. He's a really tall guy, especially for welterweight. And Bahadurzada swings for the fences.
He's won his last 3, but...
He had that really nice body kick finish earlier this year, didn't he?
But he had a really long layoff from the Thatch to the Wilkinson fight. And then he did fight in April, so this will be the first time he's fought in 2 years in a while. And he had a long layoff after the loss to John Howard. So
yeah, I kind of like Millender here, but this is if there's a fight on Fight Pass that you might want to check it out, this would be the one.
Millender's done okay.
Yeah, again, he's coming along, and
this is interesting. We'll see.
And then we have Brian Kelleher versus Montel Jackson. want to make sure I'm not confusing Montel Jackson with someone else. I am not. He lost to Ricky Simone on his UFC debut. Okay, he is the guy I'm thinking of then. And Kelleher got starched by John Lineker, but I kind of like Kelleher here, but...
So this is another Contender Series guy who then lost to Ricky Simone. Yeah. I like Kelleher here.
Yeah, this is kind of a get back on the horse situation for Kelleher, or it's a you flamed out and we're letting you go situation, either of which I'm okay with. But that will be UFC 232. As it stands right now, that's the card. It will be Saturday from the Forum in Inglewood, California. And I will have coverage in the MMA zone of 411mania.com. So stop by, say hello. Always appreciated.
Fantastic.
All right.
I hope
onto the news.
Typical event.
It's going to be your average run-of-the-mill MMA event.
I hope it's atypical.
All right. I think, again, the biggest news, the one I want to open with, the UFC announced that they have a main event for their first event on ESPN. This is not ESPN Plus. This is UFC on ESPN 1, February 17th in Phoenix.
How about that? A live UFC fight on ESPN 1.
We will have Cain Velasquez versus Francis Ngannou in what is at the moment assumed to be your main event.
For the interim heavyweight title.
No.
DVD. Yes.
Hang on.
Yes.
That is not. Hang on. That is not official. I want to make that very clear.
Will be. It's a formality at this point.
They would have announced it already if that's what they were doing. I mean, bear in mind, things could change between now and then, but
you know that's what they're going to do. So why are you acting this way, Robert? Why are you arguing? You know this is what's going to happen.
I don't know that's what's going to happen. I know that's a possibility.
It's not even a possibility. It's an absolute certainty at this point.
I would give you likelihood. I wouldn't give you certainty. Velasquez, for those of you keeping track of this, has not fought since, drumroll please, UFC 200.
And I'm still picking him to win.
I mean, this one, I'm a little torn on this one for a couple of reasons. One is the layoff. That's a long time. That's over 2 years. That's well over 2 years to be out.
Fighters have come back from layoffs that long and done well. It's not
impossible.
So,
second is that Cain
came from a long layoff before and looked fantastic.
Again, it does happen. And this is heavyweight, so it's one of the easier divisions to do that.
And he's fighting Francis Ngannou, who is basically the new Czech Congo. We saw how that fight went the first time.
Yeah, but you also saw Czech Congo drop Cain repeatedly.
Okay.
Because Cain doesn't feint. Cain doesn't jab.
Ngannou can't defend takedowns.
Ngannou can defend takedowns. Ngannou sucks if you jab at him and make him think.
Cain can do that.
Cain doesn't jab. Cain doesn't move his head.
He can.
He doesn't. Whether he can or not, sure. I don't think he's had major neck surgery, but he doesn't. I mean, look at all the straight punches he just walks onto all the time.
A healthy and prepared Cain is going to have Francis Ngannou for lunch.
Again, I will still pick him. I still am at the moment. I mean, I'm not even sold on this fight actually happening, by the way.
Look at how he fought Derek Lewis, which a matchup that really should have favored him. Come on.
Look, I'm not saying Ngannou's great. I'm saying I don't have any problem seeing Cain do his stupid little head movement at distance, come in straight and get slept.
He was one of the most overhyped prospects since Hector Lombard.
Sure, he was significantly overhyped because we were all desperate for a decent heavyweight.
We had decent heavyweight is Stipe.
Sure, we need more than one.
We were desperate for a heavyweight Mike Tyson. Is what we were desperate for.
No.
Is what? Yeah.
I think we were just desperate for a
People wanted a big scary headhunter. Francis Ngannou kind of looked like that for a bit. Now he's been exposed. The hype train has been derailed, and Cain Velasquez is now just going to salt the earth to make sure nothing grows again. Sorry about your damn luck, Francis.
Now again, if Cain can close distance safely, yeah. I mean, Francis isn't all that good in the clinch.
Cain can do.
And Cain can push a good pace. Cain also gets hit all the time closing distance. I mean, Travis Brown hit him repeatedly closing distance, and Travis Brown sucks.
How many people have actually stopped Cain? Just two.
Just two.
Junior and Fabricio.
Yeah.
And Fabricio submitted him.
Yes.
Because of the cardio.
Because
of the cardio.
Fabricio submitted him because, and say it with me, Cain kept walking onto punches trying to close distance.
All right.
I mean, that's all Fabricio did was either bum rush him at distance or get him to walk into stuff.
He was hurt going into the first fight with Dos Santos. And then look what he did. Look what he did to Dos Santos in the 2 rematches.
Sure, yeah, but that was also, 6 years ago?
The first one was November 2011, so...
7.
7 years ago. Just over 7.
So
the
7
second
and 6 years ago.
So?
And the man hasn't fought in over 2 years. And is made of glass.
He's still Cain Velasquez.
Yeah, he's still good enough to beat a lot of heavyweights, and I still, I am going to pick him, assuming the fight holds together.
Just say it, you're rooting for Ngannou and you want him to take Cain's head off.
I am not rooting for Ngannou.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not. Honestly, I don't care who wins that fight.
I can read between the lines here.
No, I think there's a significant amount of overlooking, of either overestimation of certain aspects of Cain's game and underestimation of Ngannou's that goes along. That's all that is.
Ngannou.
He's probably going to get pushed back into the fence because his footwork is still not all that great. He's going to miss the punch that should sleep Cain and get taken down and just kind of pounded on for a round and a half before he gasses out.
You want to see Ngannou take the head off, though. Is what I can tell.
Really all I want is blood, and quite frankly, Cain's more likely to deliver that.
We'll see. I'm picking Cain here.
Yeah. And again, I'm picking Cain.
It's not the worst fight you can make for an ESPN debut, but hopefully they don't add interim title to the mix, because, I mean, really, what are we doing here? Talk about satire. Vitor Belfort's in talks for an MMA return in 2019.
Whatever. Look, he's gonna go somewhere that'll let him juice, and fine.
He's probably gonna go to Bellator.
That or Ryzen. And you know what? If he's gonna get paid, Godspeed and party on. I probably won't be watching.
I mean, Holly Holm versus Aspen Ladd for UFC 235.
That's an interesting fight in a couple of respects.
I'm picking Aspen Ladd.
I don't know. I'm torn because Ladd is the best prospect that division has at the moment. If she can make weight consistently, because she missed pretty badly her last fight, I seem to recall.
Let's see. Stefan Struve versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima, UFC on ESPN Plus 3.
Because the world apparently needs more Stefan Struve fights. It does.
Also for that card, now this is a good fight, actually. Thiago Santos versus Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah, that's a solid fight.
Oh, that's the headline. It's a good matchup. I don't know about it being a headliner, but it is ESPN Plus 3. So I like the fight, though. And Blachowicz and Santos have both been doing exciting things lately.
Yeah, this is likely a contender-style fight. If Blachowicz wins, that's, I think, 3 or 4 in a row.
And Santos has won his last couple fights, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like Blachowicz is having one of the best runs of his career lately.
Easily.
Considering, he's kind of not been all that impressive earlier. Santos has won his last 3 as well. And he's 2-0 at light heavyweight. See what else. John Lineker versus Corey Sandhagen at ESPN +1. Another fight for that card.
Corey Sandhagen is stepping in for Cruz for that fight, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's John Lineker. Yeah.
Yeah, John Lineker.
That's a good fight. I think it's a bit too much for Sandhagen right now.
Cruz got injured and he's out of that fight. Cruz should just retire at this point.
Yeah, probably. Let me say this: if he suffers some other injury while he's rehabbing this current one, he really should. I mean, which is very likely.
I
mean, he's already put his body through 9 kinds of hell. I mean, if you haven't heard,
didn't he tear ACLs in both knees?
One twice, one once. Yeah, he has torn the fascia completely off the bottoms of his feet. Which is just an unbelievably excruciating thing.
What causes that? What is he doing?
A lot of torque, really repeated motion, especially not properly warming up on them. A lot of golf.
So basically, he doesn't do warm ups or stretches.
No, he does. It's more.
Yeah.
I think he mentioned. Forgive me, I'm pulling from my memory banks on this one because the interview where he most talked about this was his appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, where he detailed some of the stuff that he's done. It's more... I mean, even guys who do warm up properly, it's anyone who puts a lot of angular tension on the bottoms of their feet.
I remember when his first bad injury happened, like, it really shouldn't have happened because it was just because the gym was overcrowded and I think everyone was rolling around. Like, to me, that's just stupid. But fighters
again, the fascia thing, football players get it a lot because they put a lot of that kind of angular torque on their feet, and a lot of their training is sprinting. Golfers.
How has Penn not done that with the way he fought Frankie Edgar on his tippy toes?
Because he wasn't moving that much. It's again my understanding, and I am not a doctor. It's more about the sudden pressures, sudden changes in angle and direction that really exacerbate it. I mean, basketball players, I think, get a lot of it for the same reason. I mean, if you're just up on your toes bouncing around, that won't necessarily do it, but if you do sprinting for conditioning, kind of contributes to it. And a lot of just that sudden tension, a lot of that repetitive twisting motion. Again, golfers, football players really get it, but it's a pretty nasty thing. And he's again, if you haven't heard his that version of the Joe Rogan experience with him, it's definitely worth a listen. He details some of his injuries, some of the preparation work he's gone through, the lead up to the Dillashaw fight that he talks about, the lead up to the Garbrandt fight, some of the differences, some of the struggles, his own struggles with depression. There's a lot of stuff that he goes into, and he is just, again, all fighters do this to one degree or another. They destroy significant parts of their body.
Cain has done it as well. Cain Velasquez comes to mind.
Oh yeah, Cain's done it. It's
weird. It's sort of like the thing that drove him to be such an impressive champion is also arguably what caused all these problems for him later in his career.
Unequivocally, a lot of the stuff that he does that has made it so difficult to beat him, there's a physical toll that goes along with that. There's a reason a lot of guys don't mimic what he does. They try to learn from it, but there's a very real physical toll to the way he throws punches consistently, to the way he moves, to your ankles, to your feet.
To make an anime comparison in Dragon Ball Z, when Son Goku first learned the Kaioken attack, increasing his usage of the Kaioken attack while it would give him amazing quickness and speed and strength, it would also tear his body apart.
Yeah, similar. Less raw physical power, more technical in this instance, but the baseline comparison holds.
Okay. And also for ESPN Plus, Danny Roberts versus Claudio Silva.
That's not
ESPN,
bad.
ESPN Plus 5. Marlon Moraes, I think, is fighting on ESPN Plus 2. Yeah, he's fighting Austin Sao.
Yes. That is Fight Night 144. That's a heck of a card, actually. You got Austin Sao and Moraes in your main event, which is a darn good fight. You have Moicano versus Aldo, which is a darn good fight. Maya and Good, I can take or leave. Livia Hinata Souza's fighting, and she's usually worth watching. Yeah, Johnny Walker and Justin Ledette is a decent enough low-level light heavyweight affair. That Brazilian card is actually kind of solid. There's a bunch that I expect to suck too, but there's some good stuff on that card.
Before this Jones situation blew up, there was a thing that happened on December 20th where it was reported that he skipped apparently a voluntary drug testing suggested by
California. Okay, they had the his hearing with California.
Yeah.
Pending because the failed drug test in the second Cormier fight took place in California, so he was just appearing before them, pursuant to removing the suspension, to making sure they were okay with him being licensed to fight in Nevada. A relatively standard thing. They recommended that he enter VADA testing, which is VADA, the Voluntary Anti-Doping, I want to say association, but I forget what the last A stands for.
Yeah, you're right.
Which is... I don't know why you would recommend that. I really don't. I mean, VADA is not a governing body. VADA is not a sanctioning body. VADA does not hand down suspensions. They don't do anything except test.
The sanctioning body suggested he take these tests.
Yeah, and he just said no, which is fine. I don't care that he said that.
Well, they said it was voluntary, but whatever.
It's just something they would have liked to have seen. John's already subject to USADA testing. I don't know what VADA necessarily adds to that.
The site, there were some issues with the proposal, but did not clarify further. I don't know what that means. It sounds like BS, but what do I know?
I mean, look, if you're already under USADA's purview, adding VADA on top of that doesn't necessarily add anything.
All I'm saying, but I mean, look, this happens and people raise questions about John Jones. All this aside, it's hard for me to say there's nothing going on here with John Jones. Even if it's in his own words, like a teaspoon of salt in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Okay?
Might even be smaller than that, actually, depending on...
Even if it's smaller than that, it's still... Something doesn't smell right about any of this. Okay? I'm sorry.
Look, my feeling on this is if the UFC ditched USADA and wanted to institute that their fighters have to submit to VADA testing, I can live with that.
What if they just went back to the old commission testing?
Look, if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do.
But they did that for all those years, and people were not happy with that.
I said at the top of the show, I don't actually care that much as long as everyone agrees to it, and
the thing is, everyone cared. Like, everyone was like, fighters are getting away with stuff. They're not, we don't have real testing in place. That was the word.
Which was probably true. And again, I'm not thrilled about it. But
there were all these holier than thou columns. There was all this reporting. There were the claims of more than 50%, 80%, blah, blah, blah. The UFC finally did something, and now you're angry.
No, I'm not necessarily angry about that.
Yeah,
My thing there was just I don't think the combination of VADA and USADA adds anything. I mean, again, VADA doesn't sanction. VADA doesn't have a policy about what happens to failed testing. VADA does nothing but test, which is fine. They're the most equitable testers.
I think UFC is not. They have some sort of dispute with VADA.
Probably. Because they would make the UFC have a policy. Like,
well, doesn't USADA do the same thing?
No. USADA suspends people. The UFC chooses to uphold it. If all your testing is done through VADA... Hang on.
Is that not a policy?
No. Their policy is we have their policy. If you go through VADA, VADA just says, here's your test results. That is literally it.
Okay.
So
who would regulate?
The UFC. The UFC would have to be the ones deciding the punishment.
Look, Robert,
for the testing.
The UFC cannot reliably self-regulate when it comes to drug testing. I'm sorry. They can't.
Well, no. The UFC can't do the testing in-house. VADA would be doing the testing, but it would just be...
They can't make rulings here either.
It would just be what's the UFC's policy on drug test failures for these substances. They would have to write something up. They would have to come up with something they would adhere to, because VADA doesn't. VADA is literally just a service to get tests done.
But UFC cannot reliably, objectively self-regulate when it comes to drug testing because they're fight promoters. And look, when push comes to shove and they're trying to keep a fight together, they're not going to make that hard decision.
I am aware of that, and
I'm
not completely aware of it.
So that's why they can't be the ones setting the rules and policy on this, and I stand by that.
Okay, if that's your stance, that's fine.
We need an independent governing body who UFC will submit to when it comes to these things. That's how it has to be.
Which is what we have with USADA.
Well, I mean, maybe it's not perfect, but I think if we want drug testing and we want random testing, I think it's the best we can do right now. If that's what you want. Not you, but
I know what you meant.
If the MMA sphere wants random testing, this is what had to happen. And if you're unhappy with it, then it's your fault, because the UFC did not want to do this, guys. I'm sorry.
Look, I imagine the UFC would be happy if they could just have no drug testing.
But look, when people always held the UFC's feet to the fire before pre-USADA over this. That was always the case. So
I'm aware. I remember the public perception.
You want to know what else? Quite frankly, I think a lot of this anger is because fans are deeply upset that a lot of guys they like are doing things they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, guys. There's a lot of. I agree. There's a lot of misplaced anger about that, guys. To anyone out there listening, here's the reality: all your favorite athletes are on drugs. Let that sink in for just a minute.
And Robert, that's why I don't trust Tom Lawler. I'm sorry, I don't trust any of them.
Look, my thing with Tom Lawler, do I believe it's entirely possible he was doping? Sure. I don't think that based on the evidence they had, that was handled in an equitable fashion. I don't like the fact that the UFC's response to him being suspended was, well, we're just going to sit on your contract for 2 years until the very minute it's up, then cut you, thus preventing you from fighting elsewhere and earning a living. That's petty and punitive.
Still don't trust Lawler at his word. Still don't.
About what?
That he doesn't know what it was or how it got there.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't trust any of them.
Again, every single athlete that you like is on something. Every single one of them in every sport.
Has Josh Barnett ever copped taking steroids ever in his life?
Josh?
Yes.
I believe he has. I'd have to double check, but I think his issue was just,
I remember like one interview, he was like, what happens in the locker room stays in the locker room when he was fighting in Pride.
Oh, yeah, that was also Pride's policy. Pride had no drug testing.
I think he also said once, like at a hearing, like I've made some mistakes or something.
Yeah. Look, if you were to ask him just, off the record, man to man, have you ever? Sure, he probably has.
He's never flat out admitted on the record to admitting
sure,
steroids.
why would he? He's still trying to fight competitively.
But that's the point. That's why I don't. That's why should I trust? So why should I trust him at his word?
I mean,
I can't.
You don't just take him at his word. You take the evidence that is being presented.
The evidence is even before his USADA incident, he failed at least three.
Sure.
At least.
And I am not saying that Josh Barnett never took anything.
Pre-USADA, pre-random testing. Okay.
Yeah, he failed drug tests. I'm aware.
Okay, I'm sorry. What? It's like. To me, it's like trusting a drug addict to not do drugs. I'm sorry.
Look, if the evidence
that
he was fighting,
like trusting an alcoholic behind the wheel of a car.
I mean,
like saying, "Hey, alcoholic, drive me home. Here are the keys."
I mean, do you mean intoxicated or alcoholic? Because there's a significant difference.
Well, with that, I mean. Intoxicated. There you go.
Okay. No, you don't trust someone who is intoxicated.
But I mean, look, the evidence says he's at least a 3-time cheater, going by the rules, right? So if you've lied,
there's no point in testing him so there's no point in looking at the exonerating evidence under the current system for that current infraction.
My point is he's proven to be untrustworthy and a cheater beforehand, and he will do what it takes to get around the written rules.
Including
and he doesn't
spending more money than he made in his entire UFC run, apparently.
And lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I'm just saying they are not loyal. They are not trustworthy. They are not obeying the spirit of the rules. They will do whatever.
I don't care about the spirit of the rules.
All right, but they will do whatever it takes to get around them and do something that they are told they cannot do.
Well, that's because there's incentive to cheat.
Because they do not care. They do not care. So why should I trust Barnett now?
Again, you should. It's not just about trusting. You don't. Again, should you take him at his word? No, you should look at everything. The fact that USADA couldn't actually prove anything.
I have looked at everything, and I cannot trust Barnett.
Like USADA couldn't prove anything.
I don't care.
I mean,
that doesn't. You know what? Look, that doesn't mean he's not guilty.
Really, that's the logic you're going to use. You have exculpatory evidence, but that doesn't mean you're not guilty. That is a bullshit way to operate.
Has Harvey Weinstein ever been convicted of anything?
Yes.
When?
Hasn't he pled guilty? I could have sworn they announced his plea deal.
He's not. He is not.
He's been indicted, and he's standing trial in the state of New York at the moment.
Yeah, but he hasn't.
So let's consider the evidence.
Yeah, that's not a conviction, Robert. He pleads not guilty.
Okay, he pled not guilty. They're going forward with trial. I didn't take this stance on Barnett until after USADA basically said we've got nothing.
I believe Barnett is a cheater. He's a multiple-time cheater, and I can't take him for him at his word. I'm sorry.
If all I had was his word, I'd agree with you. If literally the only thing opposite...
When you've done what Barnett has done over his career, it's not enough. I'm sorry.
So actual evidence is not enough.
The evidence is he's failed several drug tests.
Who cares what he did in the past?
Huh?
What does his past have to do with this particular infraction?
It has
nothing.
Nothing. He's a proven.
Absolutely nothing.
Cheater. Is a proven cheater.
So what? So your first offense, you get a pass because there's no history of it? I mean, are we now scaling up punitive damages based on number of offenses?
By his offenses, he's lucky he's even had a career. he is lucky.
It's just not replicable at scale. Your viewpoint does not work.
He's lucky he was still able to fight at all after what he's done.
That's not true at all. There's plenty of places he could have fought.
He should have, quite frankly, he should have been banned.
By whom?
I'm fine. I've always been fine with handing out lifetime bans.
That's a bizarre. That is a really weird standard.
Other people, you know what? Other people have taken harsher stances.
Sure, and they're just as bizarre, bordering on stupid in some cases.
All right. I don't care. I don't care being radical on this. I don't care being the extremist on this because I am pragmatic to a fault, and Barnett is a cheater.
No, radicalism and pragmatism do not exist at the same time in the same place. If you are radical, you are not pragmatic.
I don't believe I'm radical on this. You do.
You're radical.
Good. But nothing smells right about this Jones thing either for the last several years. But this is what we are. This is where we are right now. And the fans are at fault and the media pundits are at fault because this is what they practically demanded. Because you were not okay. You were not okay with the standard that was set beforehand, and the UFC was not doing enough. So the UFC found a governing body to submit to, and this is what we ended up with because you were not okay with how they did it before.
Now, quite frankly, at this point, I'd be more interested to see what happens if they just abolished it. If they just abolished drug testing altogether. I'm just curious what would happen.
We'd have TRT Vitor.
Okay, so what? Is my question.
I mean, is that okay?
Again, if tomorrow the UFC said no more drug testing, and they were able to.
Here's my question: when you have Vitor, who clearly, it doesn't make Vitor more dangerous to fight because he's clearly bigger. Right? On the TRT. We would agree with that.
Yeah, his physique, he had a very different physique when he was on that than when he was off it.
But does it make you hit harder? Does it make you stronger?
I mean, again, if it's doing its job, in theory, it increases muscle mass and recoverability.
So, I mean, does it make fights less safe? Within the rule.
I don't think drug testing makes fights more safe.
Okay. But that's not what I'm asking.
But it's kind of the point. If your point is safety...
Here's what I'm... Well, look. That's the argument people make, is that...
If you're making the safety argument for people voluntarily bludgeoning each other or choking each other unconscious or shattering limbs or tearing ligaments...
That was the argument. That was the argument that people made. You're not hitting a ball with a stick. You're putting two guys in a cage, making them fight one another. This is not the same as baseball, right? That is what people who wanted a new drug testing program would say. They would make that argument.
Again, if you're trying to argue safety, you don't get to say that. You don't get to make that argument while the UFC is booking Diego Sanchez and BJ Penn in 2018. You just don't. You don't get to pretend that safety is of utmost concern when people with no experience and, quite frankly, no business being in the UFC are fighting in the UFC.
All right. Well, look.
Drug testing is so far down the list of safety concerns versus old man Penn and his cumulative CTE stepping back into the cage.
If you want drug testing and random testing, this is the best program we'll have. And I
do not believe this is the best program you will ever have.
You brought this on yourselves because you want VADA and you want UFC to set its own rules. It's not going to
say that.
Yes, you did.
I said that's what would happen, and I said, quite frankly, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
It's not feasible. It's not realistic. It's not realistic at all.
Is it the best scenario? No. I don't think we're living in the best scenario.
Who regulates the Olympics? Who handles the?
Geez, do you really want? Hang on. Who regulates to what? To what part of regulation are you asking about?
We need Olympic level I mean, do the Olympics do it better?
Really? That's going to be your standard?
Who is the standard right now?
There is no standard. Everyone's flying by the seat of their pants. That's half the problem.
In any sport.
You can't find me a good drug testing program in a sport. They don't exist. Name one. How's baseball's drug testing policy going for you?
I don't know. I was told that before UFC brought this on, that in baseball you're randomly tested at least once a year.
Yeah, you get randomly tested once a year? And when was the last time someone was suspended in baseball?
I don't know. I don't follow baseball. I would have to look it up.
How about the NFL then? You want to know the joke that is the NFL's drug testing policy? How about basketball? What's the NBA's? There is not a good drug testing program in any sport on God's green earth.
Okay, so
does not exist.
All right. Well, that people weren't saying that pre-USADA.
No, the people in the MMA bubble weren't saying that.
Bear
in mind, the MMA bubble works both ways. That's
what I'm saying. So what do we want here?
I don't know. That's up to the marketplace. That's up to the individual fans, and as a result, the utilitarian.
The fans would get up in arms about TRT and every other little thing.
Yeah, they would.
Anderson Silva and EPO and all the other nonsense. So they did something about it, and now it's not. And now you're saying they should go away. Well, you can't have it both ways, Robert.
First of all, I was not hugely on the USADA bandwagon necessarily.
Okay.
Second, I'm not saying they should go away. I said I'd be curious to see what would happen. That's a different thing.
I still don't trust any fighter because I believe all of them are cheating and they're getting caught, and they don't have good excuses.
Okay, so I'm curious as to what are you happy with the current system then?
Am I happy with it? No. But I think if the belief is we need a system and a set of rules, then this is what we have.
All right.
And I think what we had before was adequate. But it wasn't adequate for most of the audience and for MMA pundits. But whatever. So here we go. Quite frankly, I'd be fine if it was legal. Because I don't think steroids make you a better fighter. I don't think PEDs really make you a better fighter. Even though they might give you I think they might give you some in-cage advantages, but I don't think they make you better at what you do.
I mean, the supreme irony is that MMA and most combat sports generally are probably the least affected. I shouldn't say combat sports more generally because wrestling is a whole other story, amateur wrestling. But MMA and boxing in a lot of respects.
Now, I was fine with the idea if commissions wanted to run random tests, if they wanted to random test athletes and hey, the UFC helped pay for this, I would have been fine with that. But, I think they started doing that, guys started getting caught, and people got up in arms. So here we are.
Yeah, again, the UFC has at various points run towards...
Look, fighters were complaining about it too. Tim Kennedy. And you know what's ironic to me? After USADA comes in, Tim Kennedy is nowhere to be found. Sort of ironic. I'm sorry.
Well, Tim also got the brunt end of a couple of bad policies from USADA and just generally fell off anyway.
Look at Tim Kennedy and you tell me There's nothing suspicious about his physique. I'm sorry.
There's nothing suspicious about his physique.
Yeah, I disagree. Tim Kennedy looked like a late 80s WWF superstar.
No.
Yes.
He was not that ripped.
He was.
He was not that ripped. He was ripped, don't get me wrong. He was a ripped guy. He was not as ripped as... He was not that ripped.
I mean, I'm looking at a photo right now. He looks jacked.
Yeah, again, he was a... Don't get me wrong. There was a lot there, but he was not a late 80s guy.
He looks like Hercules Hernandez here.
He does not look like Hercules Hernandez.
He definitely does.
If anything, he has more definition than Hercules
Hernandez.
All right,
I think we get into this circle a lot. I'm ready to move on. It's been fun.
All right. Let's see then. Are there any other announced fights that we wanted to go over?
Not off the top of my head. If you have any.
Let me have a quick look through some of the dates that we didn't touch on just yet that have a lot of nothing. They did announce a few fights for Fight Night 147. Jack Marshman and John Phillips, Claudio Silva, Danny Roberts, which you touched on, Tom Breeze and Alessio Di Chirico, and a fight that should not be happening, so I won't discuss it. So that's their return to London, right? They're the O2 for that.
Be happening. What's the fight that should not be happening?
Priscilla Cachoeira and Molly McCann.
Oh.
Neither of them should be in the UFC.
Oh.
I mean, they just shouldn't. We went over Blachowicz and Santos, not Dos Santos. And some of the ones that got announced for that.
Just KP says he's down to fight Ally Kenta. I don't hate that fight.
Yeah, I'm down for that one. Have they not fleshed out 234 yet?
I don't know.
I think the only announced fights so far for 234, you have Whitaker and Gastelum and Israel and Adesanya versus Silva, France versus Paiva, Crute and Spann, Kassem and De La Rosa, and then Burin and Martinez.
You have your main
missing like half that card.
But you have your main and co-main for now. But
you do.
I mean, look.
Hopefully they hold together.
It's a new era, Robert. You can't expect UFC to have a whole numbered pay-per-view card put together less than 2 months out, you know?
At this point, we're lucky if they've got it 2 weeks out.
Yeah, pretty much.
They'll probably... They moved some of the stuff from 233 to that event, didn't they?
Benavidez versus Ortiz was moved to ESPN Plus 1. Zach Cummings versus Travis Smith.
Okay, no, they didn't actually. Jeez.
Different fight.
Yeah,
but
that first fight on ESPN Plus is not bad.
Yeah, it's just that it's on ESPN Plus.
I got the internet. I can find it.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Look, I'm not saying I stream events. I really don't. But I'm also not going to pretend it's not a thing. I have to figure out where I'm going to get the ESPN Plus subscription from, and et cetera, but no, it's not a bad card. Yeah,
if they have a free trial or something, I'll check it out. Legally, by the way.
Oh yeah, free trials are legal.
Yes, that's what I'm. Yeah, that's why I said that. I don't know what you're talking about.
We're just jumping through plausible deniability loopholes at this point.
Now you're making it sound like something weird is going on, and I don't appreciate that. I went to an Anderson Silva press conference a little while back. That was interesting.
Yeah, I saw that you were there. What all did that entail?
I think they were really trying to, Anderson Silva has this new gym in, West Hollywood called Spider Kick, and I think he and his team were trying to really push this kind of Spider Kick brand, kind of giving him this logo, like of him doing the Vitor Belfort kick from that fight, and they're trying to make it like his sort of like Air Jordan logo, basically. So, and they had some merchandise there, and they were talking about promoting his fight with Adesanya. The other thing is they brought one of his training partners, who was a guy that apparently beat Adesanya in kickboxing. So that's what they were kind of trying to push it as well. A fighter who beat Adesanya in his kickboxing career, who was it? Alex Pereira, who beat him, it looks like, in 2016. He's beaten him twice, I guess.
Yeah, 16 and 17.
So he's like, they're saying, oh, this guy's in Anderson's training camp, and he's training him for this fight, basically. So nothing really earth-shattering, but Silva, he seemed to be in a good mood. He seemed happy to be there and everything. So it wasn't bad. It's quite. I mean, I would say that Ed Soros and I are in a good place right now, because we had a bit of an incident some years back. He got really angry at me, like, not like we fought, but he got really angry at me once when I asked him a couple questions at a press event, and he didn't take kindly to it.
How dare you ask him questions at a press event? I mean, seriously, Jeff, how dare you?
I don't even think I was being. I don't think I was being that rude. I was asking him about his statements about, like.
I mean, he's only the manager for fighters in the UFC at a press event where he's asked, like. Sorry, Ed Soros is
just to get into it. Like, I think he had made some statements about who he wanted Anderson to fight, and I had asked him about that, and he got he's like, get the F out of here, shut the hell up. Like, I don't know. I think he was just in a bad mood that day. And he kind of took it out on me, but I don't feel like I was asking anything like really, rude or kind of like taboo, I don't try to like confront and, be a jerk, or I don't try to ambush guys,
Yeah.
But I feel like he took it as like an ambush. But I feel like we've made some progress, because I was there. I was invited to this event, and I was treated fairly well. So no complaints on that end.
You have a report for that in the MMA Zone, don't you?
Yeah, you can check that out. I wasn't able to really like sit down and interview Silva, but we did chat a little bit, and those questions and answers are and the other, Anderson's not like the best conversationalist anyway, so it's not like if I had time to sit and interview him, it wouldn't have like translated that well in text, Yeah. It's not like I can sit with Anderson and like just go back and forth like I did with CM Punk a little while back. Remember?
I recall that, yeah.
Because there is a language barrier, and Silva does speak and understand a little bit of English, but it's still not super fluent. So, yeah, if people could check that out, I would appreciate it.
What else would you like to plug, unless there's something else we wanted to touch on here?
Of Aquaman. Didn't hate Aquaman. Kind of enjoyed it.
You didn't hate it.
And I hated Batman versus Superman. Bumblebee was okay. I think Bumblebee is getting quite a bit overhyped. Because
just very briefly, for people who don't know how aggregates work, it's got 90 some odd % on Rotten Tomatoes, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, to me,
hang on. For those who don't know how an aggregate works, that just means that 90 whatever % of reviewers gave it a passing grade. That's literally all that means.
At least passing. Some probably liked it more than in a passing grade.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. But again, at a minimum, I mean, like, I can't remember which movie it was. Mark lost his mind over it having this really high Rotten Tomato score, and he went, "It's not that good." I went, "It's an aggregate."
Rotten Tomatoes scores are misleading. But my point is,
you have to know how aggregates work. You have to understand the data collection.
But here's my point. Some people are raving about Bumblebee. Some people definitely are raving about it. But I think it's comparatively because the other Transformers movies have been so horrendous and so off.
You lower the bar enough, and just driving safely from point A to point B becomes a victory.
And look, the movie is decent, and it's like, oh, okay, finally we can actually translate the G1 designs to live action, which is what we wanted 10 years ago. Like now they've finally done that, and they show it, but even then it's fleeting. So I'll say Travis Knight, decent job, step in the right direction. You didn't make a great film. The best moments were copied from Iron Giant and E.T. So you made a decent movie, a halfway decent movie. You didn't make a masterpiece, but the robots are not even really that's my other big problem. Like we can have like those Planet of the Apes movies, the prequels, that have the motion capture CG characters as sort of like living, breathing characters within the plot, but we can't have that in Transformers.
Not just in the plot. Like they are the central. Like
right, they drive the plot.
Mean, the middle one is one of my. I loved that movie to death.
Right.
In no small part because Caesar's the main character.
Right.
It's not about Jason Clarke. It's about Caesar.
Look, it doesn't even have to be that level, but I want something at least comparable for the Cybertronians.
Yeah, like, that would be nice.
I mean,
I don't care about Mark Wahlberg's awkward romances. I just don't. Give me
look
more.
Back at all the movies. The robots are like they're gimmicks. They're not really character. They don't really have characterization. They're just kind of there and they're gabbing back and forth, but they don't really have like agency. I want agency like Rocket Raccoon has agency in a film, basically. Like he's not just he's not just there to be like, oh, there's a talking record. No, that he's an actual character existing within the story. And I've never quite gotten that feeling with the Cybertronians in these movies. But once again, this was a step in the right direction. And if they do make more movies, I hope they can push it forward and not go back to the Michael Bay style. Because that was... Look, I say this because I'm a long-time love Transformers. And I truly believe this like little toy line has amazing mythology. And I just want to see it get represented the best way on screen.
I'm with you. I mean, you and I are about the same age. We grew up with Transformers.
Yeah. But, like, it's not just about growing up with them. I truly believe these are great stories and great characters. I believe they're more than just like, oh, we just found some cool Japanese toys that we're just going to build a whole thing around them. I truly believe this is a great mythology. I truly believe it. And I truly believe in the potential of these being great stories. I just feel we haven't quite gotten a story to the level of the mythology. And that's just what I want to see. I believe it's possible now, and I just want to see it happen. Because I feel like if you can make a movie as good as Avengers or Infinity War with these comic book superheroes, I believe it can be done with Transformers. Because, look, I think the best Transformers stories were in the comics. Were either in the Marvel or IDW comics. There are some really good ones, not just the cartoons. But that's that's my little rant about that. Check out my reviews of Bumblebee and Aquaman, which was I had fun with it. It's definitely absurd and cheesy at times, but I think it did it in a way where it sort of worked. There's a very fine line when you're doing that type of material. I think Aquaman was kind of able to manage it. Is it a great movie? I would say no, but I think it's like you can watch it, have fun, It is definitely way too long. It is like 10 minutes too long. And it's over 2 hours and 20 minutes. I don't think it needed to be that long. But all right. That's all I had. Thank you, Robert. Happy holidays to you. Everyone be safe. And say your prayers for UFC 232.
Let's hope. We will be back here next week, so I hope to see you then.
Thank you.
All right. As for myself, this coming... Not Tuesday. Tuesday is literal Christmas, and Mark, while being an evil overlord, will not make me work on literal Christmas. But Wednesday, Mark and I will be reviewing Bumblebee. So you can tune in for that. We'll be back on Damn You Hollywood. That's had a couple of weeks off. So Mark and I will tackle that, and I will make bad jokes at the expense of John Cena. Because I can. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I will see it before I review it. That's the only thing I can promise. So, for those of you who like that, tune in. Then January 1st, 2019, Mark and I will be reviewing Aquaman. I'm trying really hard not to take the back-to-back reviews of those two movies to close out 2018 and start 2019 as a sign of what 2019 has to bring. Because I'm not looking forward to either one. But you just heard Jeff talk about Aquaman. I have a good friend whose perspective I don't always agree with, but I always respect, who had a lot of fun with Aquaman. I mean, he also had a lot of fun with Venom, and he and I have talked a little bit about our differences of perspectives on that, but again, just a friend of mine who works in... I forget what he does at the moment, but he's a writer. I don't think he's paid to write at the moment, but he lives in Hollywood. He's working in the studio system. He's done internships. He has other jobs because there's only a handful of people that are actually paid to make movies in that city. But I always respect his opinion, so I'm trying not to go in with too much baggage before seeing those movies, but we'll see how that works out. Again, I will have coverage of UFC 232. Let's all hope it holds together. Then next Saturday, which is the 30th, will be the last show of 2018. We will have a review of 232, and will we preview? We will not. So we will just have that review, and then the week after, so the 6th, we will have our... Really, the 19th? We'll have the 6th off. Jeez. And then the 13th, we'll have our preview of UFC Fight Night 144? 43, the first event on ESPN+, the Cejudo and Dillashaw fight. So, I hope you'll all tune in for that. Until then, thank you all for listening. It's always appreciated. Share us with your friends. If you have any friends who are into the sport, point them in our direction. I am happy to take constructive criticism. If you have any, you can leave it in the comments section of 411 Mania. You can tweet me if you do that. I'm at WinfreyMMA. Not the most active. I use it more as a data gathering tool than a place to spew my own thoughts into the ether, but if you want to just yell at me over something, good place to do it. Again, I'm happy to take comments and criticisms. You can like the Radulich Broadcasting Network on Facebook to get all the necessary updates for this show and others much like it. It's pretty easy to find, and it updates again with most of our shows, so it's a good place to get information. Thanks again. Merry Christmas to those of you who celebrate. I know all of those of you who celebrated Hanukkah already did so. I hope you had a happy Hanukkah. I'd say something disparaging about Kwanzaa because it's a made-up holiday, but sorry, that sounds worse than it is. It was literally made up in I think the 60s by a professor. It's loosely based on a few other religious things, so I don't mean to besmirch all of that, but I mean, Kwanzaa, as we kind of talk about it, is essentially just made up. I mean, to what extent are they all made up, right? Sorry, I don't mean to get overly philosophical, but hope you all have an enjoyable time. Stay safe out there, most importantly, and please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.